Good evening, college football fans. We are back with another episode of the College Football Roundtable. Tonight, we are previewing the college football playoffs. Unfortunately, Pop isn't with us tonight. I know you guys out there that tune in just specifically for him to pop off. Unfortunately, I have to work on the road, and I am his only camera, so he was not able to be on the show tonight. If we have another one, he will make a triumphant return. But joining us tonight, deep in the heart of Big Ten country, a day one member of the Roundtable, never missed a show, residing where national champions reign supreme, founder of Todd Talks College Football, Todd Sandberg. Todd, how are you tonight?
I am doing well. How about yourself, Sam?
I'm doing good. Excited for to preview these playoffs. Todd, you want to tell us a little bit about that big banner behind you?
Oh, yes, ALTT. I don't know if I can get out of the way to show it, but always listen to Todd. I got that 1 year from a buddy of mine in the Penn State-Ohio State game that was a classic, and everyone thought we were going to lose that football game, and I kept saying, we're not going to lose this game, and we end up pulling that thing out. Was it 39-38, I think, and I got that moniker from my buddy Jay Copelson out of New Jersey. He was said, always listen to Todd. He's not wrong on it. So we made a banner and put it behind me, and that's our show.
Nice. Second longest tenured member, nestled in the Appalachians, founder of Sunbelt Syndicate, Dominic Corsetto. Dominic, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Well, we'll go with the opposite of always listen to Todd is never listen to Nick or Dominic in this case, because I've tried to steer people with some best bets here lately, and it hasn't worked well for me.
Me neither. So you can listen to me, but it doesn't mean I'm right.
Also from the Sunbelt Syndicate, three-time national champion and former App State wide receiver and slayer of all things Michigan, Mr. TJ Corman. How are you tonight?
I'm good, brother. I couldn't be better, man. How are you guys?
Doing well. So we got some App State Sunbelt teams in the playoffs or a Sunbelt team that we're going to be talking about. So it's good to have you guys on to give us that deep insight into James Madison. And returning to the table in an undisclosed location in a nondescript northwestern mountain range, founder of Bronco Nation Updates, Bronco Nation Live, and Blue Elevation, Mr. Nick Wade. How are you tonight, Nick?
I'm fantastic, doing better than I should be.
That's good to hear. Hey, you got a special event coming up tonight. You want to tell the folks about it and where they can go to help you out with it?
Yeah, every year we adopt 17 kids from or more from the local rescue shelter, and we tag team with the Boise State Broncos. They're student athletes, very loving, caring individuals, and we do a Christmas event for the children. So if you want to help, go to bronconationupdates.com. Links right there on the top.
All right. And making his second appearance at the roundtable after a failed journey to find his missing bowl for cereal, college football and Notre Dame enthusiast Casey Wick. Thank God he's not the John variety of Wicks, or the Notre Dame snub may have turned deadly. Casey, how are you tonight?
Good, man. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Well, welcome to the roundtable, everybody. Welcome to the roundtable. Those in the comments section, leave your comments. We'll get to them when they're relevant on screen. This is going to be a fun, informative show. Ask your questions, give your hot takes, and let's make this a good one. So without any further ado, let's get into this. The top four, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech, all with a bye. Who's got the best chance? You got Indiana's 13-0, Big Ten champions, quieted all the haters with the Big Ten championship. Heisman-winning quarterback that some say wouldn't have won the Heisman any other year. I'm sure Todd has some thoughts on that one. They have the two-time coach of the year in Cignetti, who has orchestrated a fantastic turnaround at Indiana, regardless of what you think their schedule is. They weren't winning this many games with that same type of schedule in years past. But is the success sustainable? That's what we're going to find out this year. Todd, what are your takes being up there in Big Ten country? You kind of have a feel for what everyone's talking about. Does Indiana have a legitimate claim to a national title if they continue on the path they're on?
Well, as we'll see, you've seen my bracket, Sam, so I'm
Yeah.
going to say no, based on what we're going to release later. But listen, they've had a very solid 2-year run here. Signetti is literally probably potentially, if he wins the national championship and goes 16-0, I mean, you're going to have to put him. I mean, is he on Nick Saban's lap, or is he at least, you almost got to say this is the greatest 2-year run in college football history, considering that this Indiana team was literally going into this year the worst team in the history of college football, really. And, so you got to give them that. They played a great game, in the Big Ten championship, a game that I thought Ohio State was going to win, but turned into, we got a lot to say about Ryan Day here today, but the evil genius that he is, I think, trying to, I really feel like he wants to lose a game before going into the playoffs. I'm not saying he purposely lost it, but it sure felt like he put his team in positions to have to struggle to try to win it. I think Indiana could potentially win it. I think, could the stage be too much for them? Now, you got the Heisman jinx on their lap, and you got a Rose Bowl that anybody that's ever been there or played in it or seen it is quite the, amazing thing. And is that scene going to be too much for them? I think it will be, personally, but pretty excited about the path that they've taken. Plus, when you're a team like Indiana, your depth isn't as deep as it has been for other teams, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. And they lost number 8 on that celebration at the end of the game, and he's out. And that was, if you go back and watch that game, he was an absolute wrecking ball in that game, and he's not going to be playing. And I don't believe Indiana has another player, on their depth chart that's going to replace that defensive end, hell-raising wrecker. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes, because now you can slide your blocking to take the other guy out of the mix, and do they have a guy that can actually? I mean, that kid was pressuring Julian Sayin all night long, and to get injured high-fiving some guy in the stands is kind of, it's quite honestly, it's an Indiana thing to do. Right?
Yeah. So there is a very, very, very minute chance that Signetti will get to play James Madison. Highly unlikely, because James Madison would have to beat Oregon and Texas Tech to get there. Should that happen, Dominic, how's that game going to go?
Oh, man. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if JMU and Indiana are working a little bit behind the scenes to help each other in this Oregon game to start with, but probably not too much of that. But yeah, I don't know. It would be one heck of a game, because they are calling JMU Bloomington is what people lovingly refer to Indiana as if you're in the Harrisonburg, Virginia area. And it's kind of crazy to think, if those guys who left and went to Indiana with Signetti, had they kind of stuck around, just how good this team would be. Because these aren't just also ran guys who aren't playing very much. These are some of their top players. And when Signetti left, he also took a couple players from some other Sun Belt teams. So you almost had like a little bit of a Sun Belt all-star team last year. Some of those guys left or didn't come back, but the guys that went with him from James Madison stuck around. So it would be, as some people like to say, JMU versus JMU at that point. But again, I myself don't think that's going to happen. I would love to see it just because of the storylines, but I don't know if TJ has any thoughts on, if we got to see that matchup, just how good that would be.
What do you think, TJ?
Listen, so I'm obviously always going to be biased, right? I come from a team who did the unthinkable, a few many moons ago. So there's always a chance, in my opinion. However, given the way college football is set up now, you've got NIL, you've got I don't know that JMU has enough financially, right, in terms of the guys that they have on their team currently to be able to keep up with an Oregon. Now, I'll say this. Oregon doesn't strike me as a ground and pound. They're not the type of football team that's going to run you over. What I do know about James Madison is that they have a very stout defensive line, very stout offensive line. They've got one of the biggest offensive lines in G6 now, or G5, however you want to term it. One of the biggest lines in the country. So if Oregon thinks that they're just going to line up, go man to man, and get pressure, that's not going to happen. So it's going to be 4-on-5. If it is 4-on-5, you got to watch for the double team, right, from that offensive line. Barnett is going to have time to throw. He's going to be able to sit back there and he's going to be able to see kind of where he wants. Now, the difference is going to be in the secondary and the coverage, right? Can the receivers get separation? So it's a lot to kind of unpack, and Dominic and I will get to a little bit more of it later on. But there's a pathway for it to happen. It's a very small pathway.
Yeah,
but there is a pathway for it to happen nonetheless.
Yeah. Indiana would have to get through the winner of Alabama and OU, and then, of course, James Madison would have to get through Oregon and Texas Tech in order for that to happen. Moving on to Ohio State, Todd, Nick and Casey, you guys have anything you want to add to Indiana?
No, I'll leave my Heisman snubs alone for that one. Literally could have chosen the other three and actually had it.
Your boy out of Vandy wasn't too happy, was he? Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
Johnny Manziel 2.0 right there.
Yes.
Oh
right.
my God, that was ridiculous. We'll get into it later, I'm sure, but good Lord.
All right. Ohio State, 12-1, Big Ten runner-up. Did Saying get the Heisman snub, or did they dodge the Heisman curse, so to speak? And will they continue his trend of losing the last game of the season and winning the national title? Todd, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think they have as good a chance as anybody in the field. So I think they absolutely can. I went back and rewatched that game against Indiana. There was a lot of question, much like the Michigan game last year, a lot of what the hell are we actually doing out here on this football field today? And like I said, it almost feels like it's like we're going to put ourselves in a position to, I don't want to say not win the game, but, make it as hard as possible to win the game. And, we missed a kick and we passed up on a kick. I think we should have probably took them the other ways around in that game. I think we should have kicked in the third quarter to tie the game up. And then I think we should have went for it when we missed a kick. Not saying he would have made the first kick. He obviously missed the second one. But yeah, I think Ohio State has, they have the talent. The receivers will be completely healthy. They've got just a monster inside with McDonald. He can change the game. You saw Indiana really didn't. I mean, both of those offenses weren't really moving the ball at all on each other, So, I think they can absolutely win it.
Nick, what do you think about Ohio's chances of getting through the winner of Miami and A&M, and then what most people are assuming is going to be Georgia after they take on Tulane or Ole Miss?
First, I want to address just the first two questions. And The first one was, I think, for me, I think Indiana has the best shot at the bye game to advance. I think that they're just on a roll, and that also leads me into the Heisman debate. I think the committee got it right this year. I had Mendoza, Love, Pavia, and then Sayin all ranked in that order. You could have bounced it back and forth between Love and Mendoza, and I would have been fine with that. But I think for saying, I think from my perspective, I think that Ohio State's just got a great team, and so that's why he ranked lower for me among those Heisman candidates. But I think, and you know what I've chose. I do think that Ohio State's done a lot of winning, and I think that I don't think that they're going to be going back to back this year. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, and you raised the question or the fact, I guess you could say, does Julian Sayin have the same success if he doesn't have that dominant wide receiving core? If anything, one of his receivers probably should have won the Heisman over. And I'll go to the wide receiver with that one. TJ, what do you think? Should a receiver at Ohio State have been in the consideration over Julian Sayin?
I think, so two things. The correct answer is yes, right? Because I say it somewhat tongue in cheek, but I also say it because, again, to your point, you've got to have the athletes on the outside to throw the ball to, right? Like Jeremiah Smith is, come on, he's the best football player. Quite honestly, outside of Love, in my opinion, the best college football player going right now. I used to think it was Ryan Williams. Jeremiah Love swayed me. Jeremiah Smith swayed me. And then I saw Jeremiah Love, right, at Notre Dame. And I'm thinking, good God, I can't pick between the three because it certainly is not a quarterback. So to answer your question, and then also, too, he's got kind of a two-headed monster at quarterback because if Jeremiah Smith is locked up, then he's got Tate on the outside. I believe it's Tate. Yeah, Tate on the outside as well. And it just seems like you kind of got to pick your poison. You can't double either. So the reality of it is he's a product of a really good offense. It's kind of like Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's not going to wow anybody with his arm. He's not going to be, this top 3 quarterback every single year. But when you've got George Pickens and you got CeeDee Lamb on the outside, it's hard not to be good. You know what I mean? So he's a product of the team around him. Not that he's not good and not that he's not deserving, but there's a case to be made that the offensive line and the 2 wide receivers that he has really kind of do the job for him, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yep. You're allowed to say anything on this show. We encourage controversy. Controversy sells.
That is true.
Casey, you think Jeremiah Love is considered the best player in college football given his kind of seemingly up and down year?
I would say yes. TJ nailed it, though, as far as Ohio State. If you look at Mendoza and Sayin, they were only up for the Heisman because they're the best quarterbacks on the best teams. Right. If you look, just let me throw this stat out for you, Sam, and I'll go back to the Jeremiah Love thing. Yep. Fernando Mendoza's stats this year, where he threw for all but 3,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, with a 71% completion rate. Last season, their quarterback, Curtis Rourke, had 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Really? This is the Heisman conversation we're having?
Exactly. And I was also looking at, not to cut you off, Casey, but I was also looking at the last quarterback who won the Heisman. Joe Burrow had 60 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. So what are we doing?
Yeah. Right. I personally, if you look at it like this, most valuable player to their team, Diego Pavia, hands down.
Sure.
His breakdown was it is what it is. But Jeremiah Love is probably the best player in college football to the team, outside of the quarterback position. Now, I think if he doesn't get hurt at Stanford, which was a dirty shot, taking a knee to the ribs, probably a different conversation. And the Miami game where they didn't use him. Notre Dame's offensive coach, I don't know what they were thinking in the Miami game. They were trying to be smarter than they needed to be. You got some of the best athletes, just use them.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Dominic, you have anything to weigh in on the conversation or?
No, I actually echo a lot of the sentiments from Casey and TJ on that regard, so I won't regurgitate.
All right, moving on. Number 3, Georgia, 12-1 SEC champions. Are they the most slept on one-loss team, Nick?
Take you on mute.
Nick?
Yes. There he goes.
I don't know if they're the most slept on. Maybe in the round of buys. I would think. You have, maybe that, the recency of the Texas Tech game that they just won the championship, and then Ohio State just always has a lot of eyes on it. Maybe they are the most slept on. At number 3, I think that they're probably overlooked in regards to Ohio State. I think because rightfully so. Ohio State's still the championship. It's still the champion until you beat them. So,
Yeah.
I think they are slept on a little bit.
Yeah. They seem to play to the level of their opponents. Does that make them appear maybe less dominant? Excuse me. Try that again. Use my words. Less dominant than what they really are. Dominic, do you think that them looking like, or I don't know if it's designed because Ohio State, they kind of have this start out slow and end with a punch, much like what we saw Georgia do to Alabama in the championship game. It seems like Georgia's been playing to their opponent's level, doing just enough to win until they get to the CFP time. Do you think that might be why people are kind of not talking about them as much as some of these other teams?
Yeah, possibly. Almost equate that to like the NBA regular season, where they say people really don't play hard until the playoffs, right? So is Georgia a byproduct of that type of thought process? Like, we've done enough to win. We've won the games we're supposed to win. I mean, maybe we're not giving them enough credit for just how soundly they beat Alabama in that championship game. Maybe it wasn't Alabama that being that bad. It was Georgia being that good. But I do think, as your first question went, I do think they are kind of being slept on. It's not the big, powerful SEC anymore. It's more about these two teams in the Big Ten more than the SEC champion right now, which may be a big mistake if they're not paying close enough attention, because this Georgia defense has seemingly woken up pretty well and firing on all cylinders as they get into the most important part of the year here.
Todd, is Georgia the most prominent threat to the Big Ten bringing home another national title?
Listen, I
Without
got a lot to say about Georgia here, and we watched them all year long, but what we really watched was, first of all, let's start with this. Why the hell is Georgia number 3 and Ohio State number 2? I want to know that, because they gave Georgia the easy path, because they put them at number 3 so they would play Ole Miss, and they have to build up Georgia to get to the semifinal, because there's a chance they could get a no SEC team there, and they had to guarantee an SEC team getting to the semifinal. That's the first and foremost thing. No time in the history of college football have you won the SEC championship and didn't move. That's never happened. So why did that happen, first and foremost? Secondly is, listen, Georgia played Georgia Tech terribly. That was a Georgia Tech team that was giving up 40 points to teams like Boston College and Wake Forest. Georgia sleptwalked through that game. What did Gunnar Stockton run? Like 15 or 18 or 20 times rushing in that football game. He had a lot of rushes against Alabama. Yes, they beat Alabama by 21 points, and beat them really by 35 points, in my opinion. They gave up an extra 7 points and probably should have scored another 7. But that Alabama team that played in that football game had 10 injuries, no running game. So I'm not going to jump on this bandwagon that Georgia is and when I'm saying this, listen, Georgia's a good football team, a dominant football team, but this is nothing even in the remotely close to 22 and 23 Georgia teams. I mean, this is not even in the same ballpark, in my opinion. So with that being said, yes, Georgia is the one team that I would like not to play as an Ohio State fan. But with that being said, I don't think this is a scary Georgia team by any means. Yes, their pass rush was good against Alabama. So was Oklahoma's. So was Auburn's, earlier in the season. So I'm not, or Auburn's against Alabama, I mean. I'm not overly convinced that Georgia's a dominant team this year. That's my 2 cents.
All right. And I would argue that maybe that's their plan, their strategy all along heading into the playoffs, just barely beat. And then because there's a lot of people that thought the same thing about Ohio State last year after losing to Michigan, and we saw what Ohio State did in the playoffs.
Absolutely. No question about it.
Georgia's path to the championship is the winner of Tulane at Ole Miss, and then the winner of the Miami A&M versus Ohio State game. So, I think Georgia's got probably one of the toughest paths to get there, but also I guess you could argue one of the easiest at the same time because they've already played some of the teams they're going to see. Casey, Georgia, do you think the CFP is setting up a rubber match in the national championship between Georgia and Alabama?
There's no way I don't see Alabama making the national title. There are too many holes in that team. I mean, Nick Saban's gone. They need to. I think Kevin DeBoer's gone in another 2 years. That fan base is so used to winning national championships that if he doesn't, get to a point where he goes undefeated in this season, he's probably out in a few more seasons.
Who do you bring in to replace him at this point?
That's $1 million question because I think everybody's seeing right now with the Michigan search and that whole shamble that it is everybody's locking their coaches up. If you have a good coach, you're paying your coach to stay, regardless of, So that would be the $1 million question.
Lane Kiffin.
Oh God.
Let's leave Lane where
he's not leaving LSU.
Yeah, let's leave Lane where he is.
They've got that money. I don't know if anybody saw the coach O interview where they talked about the NIL deal, about how they said about the money, how he walked through the back door. Now it's legal. He can walk through the front door. LSU's got the money. They ain't. Yeah. Lane's not going anywhere if he wins. But
Coach O to Alabama.
No, $25 million NIL budget.
Yeah, you ain't lying. Down there, all that homegrown talent. I think they have the state of Louisiana has the highest NFL player percentage per capita in the entire league. But as far as Georgia, I think I was surprised they honestly didn't go to 2 for being the SEC championship, winner versus Ohio State losing the Big Ten, even though Ohio State only lost by 3. I think you could have made some argument there as far as if conference championships matter, like they want to talk about on ESPN all day long, then you should have rewarded them for winning. But I think a lot of it comes down to Georgia and Ole Miss. They want that rematch so they can media and spin it up. As far as Ohio State, I mean, at 2 they got a pretty good path because if they beat, they come down to the Texas and Miami game where Texas A&M's offense does not want to meet the Ohio State defense. Marcel Reed will get utterly exposed in that. He just doesn't have the quarterback intangibles to win that. So I think Ohio State actually has a pretty good path to get there as well. But yeah, the SEC, I think those days, since everybody can pay their players now, it's kind of everything's got the great equalizer, as we'll call it.
Yeah. TJ, you want to weigh in on Georgia?
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of 2 ways about this because if you look at the paths, if you're talking about 2 versus 3, should Georgia had moved up to 2? Quite honestly, the path would have been the same. There's not much difference between now a Tulane and a Miami. They're quite, in my opinion, probably pretty similar in terms of what they can do. Miami's not blowing anybody away. Miami's not the kind of team that, in my opinion, that's they don't have the offensive line to do it. They don't have the talent on the outside to compete. So if you flip Georgia and Ohio State, I think you're really going to get the same results in terms of who's going to play who. It'd just be Ohio State versus Ole Miss and Georgia versus Texas A&M, in my opinion. And quite honestly, both would end up being where I have them, which would be in the semis. So I think we're setting up for that to be the clash in the semis for Georgia and Ohio State. I will say to Todd's point earlier about Georgia not being the same Georgia, to a point, I agree, because they don't have as dominant enough. I mean, you think their whole entire defensive line is playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, essentially. So, like, I mean, they don't have the guys that they used to have. However, I think also, like Dominic said, there's something to be said for how soundly they beat teams. They don't make a lot of noise. They're not coming in and scoring, 50 points a game like a Texas Tech might do, but they're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, and they're beating them soundly, and they're beating them the right way. They're not making a lot of noise, and I think that is – we suffer in this country, and when it comes to college football and all football, from what's called, in my opinion, recency bias. And so right now the wave is Indiana. And everybody's riding that wave, and everybody's riding Kurt Signetti, and they should, because he's a hell of a coach and they have a hell of a team. But I think Georgia is going to remind people pretty quickly who they are once this thing gets kicked off.
Yeah. And you mentioned Texas Tech, who coincidentally happens to be our next talk about. So great segue, TJ. You're natural at this show thing. Texas Tech's 12-1, Big 12 champions. They dominated BYU twice, and some would argue those are basically their only big wins outside of maybe Utah. But they lost to Arizona State. Is Texas Tech the Big 12's last hope to claim P4 relevance, Dominic?
Last hope, maybe for this year, yes, but in general, no. I mean, I don't think the Big 12 is kind of going away. If you look how poorly the ACC performed this year, yeah, they lucked out and got Miami in this field. But I think ACC is closer to being irrelevant as far as power conferences go than the Big 12 is. Defense wins championships, so I think Texas Tech stands a good chance, even though they don't have one of the scarier offenses that you'll see in this field. I think they have an offense that could, have some luck and get some stuff done. Again, with that bye, I don't know. It's going to be hard for them to sit idly by for so long before they play someone who's just coming off a win the week previous. So it'll be an uphill battle, but I think the defense should keep them in a game against whoever they end up playing.
Yeah. Their path to the conference or to the title goes through the winner of JMU Oregon and then the winner of the Alabama OU versus Indiana. Does Texas Tech have the easiest path? Casey?
I don't know if I want to say easy. I mean, I guess it kind of is what it is there, but they don't have it hard. I think Oregon might actually be a little bit slept on. They've got the talent. Donnie Moore as a quarterback he's talented. He's young, but he's progressed throughout the season. And Dan Lanning is a great motivator. I mean, he's not Signetti level, but he's good. So he'll have his team ready to play against Texas Tech. I mean, he'll have his team ready to play James Madison. Playing for James Madison at home against Oregon, that environment's going to be crazy. If I had the money to fly out there, that'd be a hell of a game to catch.
Yeah.
But Texas Tech, I personally, this is me, and you know this, it's on my bracket. I actually have Oregon beating them, just because outside of Texas Tech's front seven, their back end's untested because their front seven's been so good. Oregon actually has the athletes to expose the secondary, and their offense. I mean, it's good. It's not elite. So, and Oregon's defense is actually in the top 25 this year. So since Lanning's got there, their defense has come a long way. They're no longer just a flashy offensive team. But yeah, I mean, on paper, Texas Tech does look like it has an easier path than everybody else. I just don't see it that way. I think Oregon's actually going to surprise some people if Lanning can get his team up to play.
What do you think, Nick? Does Texas Tech have an easy path, or is Oregon going to be there? They're assuming Oregon gets past James Madison. I know we can't write them off, otherwise, especially you and I, considering how everyone wrote off Boise State against Oklahoma, and we've seen firsthand. And of course, Dominic has seen firsthand what happens whenever the little guy is written off before the game even starts. If Oregon beats James Madison, do they trip up Texas Tech?
Yeah, I don't think this is an easy path for Texas Tech. I think out of the whole thing, this bracket is best set up for Indiana. I think it's the easiest path for Indiana, honestly. And I'm kind of I side with Casey on this one. Yeah, my heart is with James Madison, but as you and I know, how hard it is to play in Autzen Stadium and win. But we've also seen them lose, and that environment is hard. And but James Madison is a great team. They've got the spirit of Signetti still on that team, so anything can happen. Any given Saturday. So, but yeah, I don't think it's a matter of easy path for Texas Tech. I think that side of the bracket's all laid up for Indiana.
Yeah. Todd, do you think Indiana's got the best route to get to the national title on that side of the bracket with Texas Tech in the way?
Indiana?
Yeah.
No. Again, I went from the beginning. I think this is extremely new territory for Indiana, and we'll see how they handle that. I mean, this is like you got to win 3 pretty solid football games in a row, right? Like that's what they got to do. Now, who do they match up with? The original question that you started with was Texas Tech, and
yeah,
do we think Texas Tech or Oregon is going to get to that next round, which potentially could be Indiana if they get by Oklahoma or Alabama? I'm 50-50 on Texas Tech personally. From what we know about, yes, their defense looks to be pretty good, but you go back and you look at the schedule of teams they played, outside of BYU, like you said, was really their toughest competition. BYU is by no stretch of the imagination a offensive juggernaut. So I think it's going to be hard. No matter whether it's Texas Tech and Oregon, and who the winner of that playing Indiana. I don't think that any of those are like those are all going to be challenging teams to play each other. So we'll see how. I think it's a tough for them. Like Indiana playing Oregon or Texas Tech is going to be challenging.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be possibly, and I really do think, that look, taking this defensive end off the field for Indiana is going to be a massive problem. I mean, this is one of their best defensive players on the field, and he is not going to be playing.
Yeah.
And if you look at Indiana, they didn't rotate their defensive line very much. A lot of teams will rotate guys in. They'll play 8 deep. Indiana really was banking on those 2 ends to play dynamite football, and they did. And now one of them's not going to be there, so I think that's going to be a hindrance for them. So, but I personally will get to the bracket. I like Oregon coming out of this area. The reason why is really because if you look at Oregon, especially since the Indiana game, what was that in sometime early October, I think. Yeah, right. They've been banged up at the wide receiver position. Dak Moore was injured. He's a superstar freshman receiver that they didn't have. And I think the game is going to come down, and the real question is with this Oregon team is who is going to be able to stop these 2 tight ends. Sadiq, I think, is the one guy, and Johnson. Those 2 guys are going to be extremely challenging matchups for both Texas Tech and Indiana's defense.
Yeah. TJ, Texas Tech, they went out and basically bought their defense. If that's the norm, if that becomes the norm, and Texas Tech is able to make it to the national title with a bot defense and basically a recruited offense, they spent so much of that money on their front 7. Is that going to take flight and spread to other teams, or do you think Texas Tech is onto something and it'll be a couple of years before other people catch on?
Well, I think people are already catching on, right? I mean, the reality of it is, I mean, we just talked about, I think before we went live, LSU having, or I think maybe while we were live, LSU having a $25 million NIL budget. Like, we understand what we have to do, right? Like, everybody understands what the next steps are. You've got to pay these guys. If you want a good football team, you've got to pay for it. It's kind of like the New York Yankees. They've paid for championships, in my opinion, for several years. And that's the formula. It's an unfortunate formula, but it is the formula. Dominic and I talked about this ad nauseum, how we can sort of mitigate all these kids transferring and what needs to happen with this money. I do want the kids to get paid, but I want there to be sort of a level. I don't want to get off on that tangent. But to your question, will this be the formula if Texas Tech goes all the way? I personally, first of all, don't think Texas Tech is going to go all the way. I think Indiana is good. Now, Indiana could stub their toe against Oklahoma. I do think Oklahoma is going to beat Alabama. They've already done it. I think they're going to do it again. Alabama has too many holes, both offense and defense. Alabama just doesn't have it this year, in my opinion. I think Kalen DeBoer's probably got a short shelf life there. And I think he's probably going to be out pretty quickly. They might already be giving them bids right now to go to Michigan. We'll see how that goes after Sharon Moore did his nonsense. But so I think Indiana could potentially, without that star defensive end, stub their toe against Oklahoma. I don't think Texas Tech is good enough to beat Indiana or Oklahoma. I just don't think that they have it. If in fact they do, though, to that point, more and more teams are going to start paying and going to find these guys. Essentially, a college freshman starting or even being really on a team that matters is going to be obsolete. It's essentially going to be these kids out of college or out of high school that are freshmen are going to go play for, a D2 or G5 school, G6 school, and then they're going to get better, and then it's going to be like a formula essentially. G5 and D2 are going to be to Power 5 and Power 4 conferences what they are to the NFL. It's just going to be a feeder system. There's not going to be a whole lot of unless you're, again, a Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Love or, somebody like that. There's not going to be enough room for freshmen to be on your team anymore because they're just not recruiting them the way they used to.
Did you guys see what I think it was the Nevada coach said?
Yep, I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
Come to Nevada and then get yourself a bag to Oregon.
Yep.
So basically come here and play for a couple, year or two and make your way. And, and I agree with, TJ there. I really do think it's going to become a lot of you guys on here are G5, fans. And I hate to say it, but this is going to be the norm. Like you'll get the freshmen, they'll produce, then they'll move on. And even D2, look at Trinidad Chambliss here.
I was just going to say Trinidad was going to be my next example.
Yeah, from Ferris State. And Ferris State's about to win the national championship again. Does their quarterback now move up to, is it just hey, we saw what this guy can do, go up again. We mentioned it earlier about, I think Dominic mentioned it, JMU with Indiana, but we forget the quarterback last year for Indiana was from Ohio University. In O'Rourke, and they really did scorch earth out there on G5 schools and get talent to come over.
Well, and to your point though, Todd, and again, not to steal the show, but the coach from Nevada has done what we want these coaches in G5 programs to do: embrace it, right? You listen. We understand. You have to kind of think in the future, so to speak. Like you have to understand that you're not going to get that guy who's going to be an Armani Edwards or Richie Williams and going to stick around for 4 years. Had we had NIL back then, Armani Edwards would have been playing at Florida after his first 2 years at App State, right? I mean, it's just kind of how it goes. And that's okay, but you have to embrace that. And that needs to be part of your recruiting tactic is, hey, listen, come here, play for a year or two, get developed, right? And then go get you a bag at Oregon or get you a bag at Ohio State or something. And that's okay. It has to be okay with you because the reality is there's a very small chance that a G5 school is ever going to win a national championship. right? So let's get ready for these bowl games, and let's get the guys that we know that can produce right now, so that we can groom them to be heroes later. And that's what you have to buy into if you're 2025, coach at Oregon State, right? Like that's what you have to sell to your recruiting class, is that you can come here and play football and do really well, and then we'll go get you at Oregon, or somewhere like that. But anyway, I'm on a soapbox. But
and then at that, you'll have the opportunity to say 2 years down the road when they're saying, all right, I think I want to enter the transfer portal. You say, look at this team we built. Look at how close we are to national title contention. Why don't you stick around for another year and then leave if you don't like it?
right.
You have that kind of opportunity as well, and then you can build a power program based on that.
And Coach Chode is just saying out loud what's actually happening at Boise State. Boise State is basically the farm system for Oregon and USC. They do it to us every single year. I'm actually writing something on how to change the mindset of Boise State to not to get people out of thinking, hey, these guys are going to be here for 4 years. It's not going to happen, dude.
No.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Look, it's
All
not
right.
even going to happen. It's not even happening at, big schools too. There's plenty of kids sitting on the bench at places like Ohio State that, aren't waiting around here either. They're transferring out. I mean, one name that comes to mind just in the last 5 years was Jamison Williams. He was here at Ohio State. He played a lot, as a third receiver or fourth receiver. And then the next year he's like, I can't, I'm sitting behind Chris Olave and Jackson Smith-Njigba, and I got to go play at, Alabama, and what he wouldn't have freaking Blitnikoff for, So, so it's not only just happening at G5, but it is like almost becoming a feeder. But any kid coming out of high school now that thinks they're going to play, like when you go to a school, like they're not going to sit around and wait 2-3 years to play anymore. They want to play now. So if they don't get on the field, they're going to transfer.
Yeah.
Even at Power 4 teams.
We saw it. We had a couple of transfers from LSU when I was playing at App State. We had a couple of guys that just were sitting on the bench and didn't get a lot of playing time and came here and were pretty decent contributors for App State. It's I don't want to say revolving door, but it can be give and take, right? You're going to have some guys that are at Alabama or at an Ohio State or at one of these higher ranked schools that they're not playing, right? And it's maybe a third tier offensive lineman, and he comes to the Sun Belt and he wrecks shop because he was really good, but the two guys in front of him were just better, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, moving along, we're going to go talk about the G5 college football playoff takeover. This year, you had two G5 teams crashing the playoffs. First up on the docket, Tulane 11-2 at Ole Miss 11-1. We're calling this game the sequel. This one's going to be played on the 20th at 3:30 Eastern Time on TNT. It is important to note that both G5 teams are on TNT, and I think that's crap, but that's just me. Ole Miss opens with a 16.5-point favorite. It's since been moved up to 17.5, and the over-under at 56.5. And ESPN's matchup predictor has Ole Miss 84% to win and Tulane 16% win. So Ole Miss has a unique opportunity. If the stars align, they get to play basically a quarter of their regular season schedule with Tulane, Georgia, and Oklahoma, all within reach of being able to play. And that, to me, is a huge injustice to the playoff system. I mean, you've already played those teams. Unless you've lost, then you can say, oh, yeah, we want the rematch and get the win. But they beat Tulane 45-10, and now they have to open the playoffs against Tulane. It really wasn't a close game at the start. Tulane fell behind early, turning them into a one-dimensional team. Dominic, what are your thoughts? Is Retzloff going to make BYU rue the day they let him slip from their grasp, or is Ole Miss going to run away with this one like they did in the first one?
Well, it's always hard to beat the same team twice, but I think it will happen here. I think Ole Miss still wins this game, but I do think it's closer this time around. Tulane's obviously got exact film on what they did wrong against this exact opponent, right? A lot of times you're saying, well, what do we improve from the week before, the 2 weeks before? Well, a lot of times schematics change between those two teams, and it's only so useful, but they're going to see these guys lined up exactly how they were in the first matchup in a lot of regards and know what's coming at them. So it's going to depend on how well Summerall and that coaching staff preps and prepares this team, knowing exactly how it went the first time around. I do think, again, it's closer, but I still think Ole Miss gets the victory here. Talent overcomes there, and Tulane run ends quickly.
Yeah. Both teams are going through coaching changes, most notably, obviously, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, and taking the coaching staff. Of course, LSU has since released them back to play or to coach in this game, all but Lane Kiffin. And, of course, Tulane's coach heading off to Florida. Casey, is the coaching change going to be Ole Miss's undoing, considering all that kind of drama that went on there, and the fact that Tulane's doing it the right way, being upfront and honest with all their players and saying, hey, I'm still going to coach you before I go, and let's go out and win this one?
For Tulane against Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss, it's not going to bother Ole Miss as much, but once they get past Tulane, it's going to be a huge issue. As much as everyone wants to call Lane a snake and all that for how he left and whatever happened behind the scenes, the dude is a brilliant offensive mind. So Tulane just doesn't have the firepower. Plus, I mean, your coach is leaving, so how much do you really want to play? I'm sure TJ could probably touch on this. Where's your motivation to play hard except for your teammates? Like, that's it. But if you know you're going against a squad that's just a lot more talented, like, yeah, we'll see how they get up for that game. But I think Ole Miss is really going to see the loss of Lane in the next game, not the first one.
TJ, you want to touch?
Yeah, I agree with Casey. It's twofold, right? Because you've got a situation where Ole Miss, right? Well, so is Ole Miss, like Casey said, Tulane's probably not going to be that big of an issue for Ole Miss. They just, unfortunately, are going to out-athlete them. Their ones and twos are as good as Tulane's ones. So it's just kind of how it goes. Depth is going to be an issue. One person goes down for Tulane or gets tired or gets subbed out on a certain play. That's who they take advantage of. That's just how it happens. But I do think the difference is going to be felt when they go up against Georgia. And the loss of Lane Kiffin is going to be an issue there for two reasons. Number one, like Casey said, Lane Kiffin is offensively just absolute genius, right? Like he say what you want about the guy, but he knows football. That's first thing. Second thing is, how many of those kids are already in the back of their mind thinking, I'm going with Lane next year, right? Like I'm out of here. Like he brought me in here. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Trinidad left. To be quite honest. I mean, it's not like there's a whole lot of competition over there at LSU to play quarterback. You get me? So to me, I'm of the mindset that some of them mentally might already be checked out. And that could be a problem against Tulane, but I think it's going to be more of a problem. And to Dominic's point, I think that's what's going to keep the game close, is because Ole Miss is not going to have their best foot forward. That said, though, I think it's going to rear its head against Georgia. And to the point of Lane Kiffin being a snake, it's not his fault the way the CFP count or the way the college football calendar is aligned. It needs to change. It is ridiculous that National Signing Day is January 2nd, but we have to figure out who our coach, like the coaching timeline, like all of this stuff can be pushed back until after the college playoffs are set up. Like we don't, what are we doing? Do we have to get kids in school at the first semester of January? Like let them go do what they're doing. We'll see you in July when it's time for summer camp. I don't need you here in January and February. Like Sure, it would be nice to get you some extra work. It would be nice to see you early, but if you're good enough to play for this team, you're good enough to get here in July and still play. Getting here in February should not matter that much, or in January should not matter that much if you're an early graduate out of high school. Like that, to me, sounds ridiculous. So as much as we want to get on Lane Kiffin for having done what he did, it's not his fault. It's the college football's calendar's fault. That needs to be changed. And before that changes, you're going to see a lot of this nonsense go on. Because as much as I love, as an LSU fan, that Lane Kiffin is at LSU, I also hate how it happened. because those kids don't deserve that. They deserve to be coached throughout the playoffs. They deserve to have the right kind of coaching, and they deserve to end it with who they started it with. And I think that's BS. So sorry, again, soapbox. I'm super passionate about it.
I'm gonna have to get a graphic for TJ pops off instead of Pop pops off.
Dude, it breaks my nerves because everybody's making it seem like Lane Kiffin did this. He didn't do this. What did you want him to do? LSU needs to have a coach so that they can go recruit. They need to have somebody in place so that they can recruit. Well, you can't recruit if you don't have a coach. And then also too, these kids don't want to play if their coach isn't there. Like, it's just, what are we doing? What are we doing? Put it, move it back until after the playoffs, and then everybody will be fine.
I do have a comment from Pop. Obviously, he's just texting me, but those that have known the Pop popping off, you've heard him say it before. It's all Band-Aids. The system needs an atomic bomb. So,
all right, I got a couple thoughts on this,
yes,
if
sir.
you don't mind. First of all, let's give it up to Western Iowa, who has just won the national championship in the JUCO division.
nice.
Heads up to that. So I'm sure we've all watched a lot of Western Iowa football in our lives. So, all right, let's get back a little bit to where we were talking about here. Tulane, right? And what is the momentum to play, and they got their coach leaving, but he's staying for the thing. I will tell you one thing. There is not a player in this playoff that has more to gain than Jake Resloff in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So Jake Resloff, we know the story, left BYU. I don't think he wanted to leave BYU. Obviously, it was an issue we don't need to get into on the show here, but he left, what was it, late May, I think, late in this early spring, late for transfers. Really the only place to go to was Tulane. So I think Jake Resloff here is a junior. He's got at least one more season of eligibility. I don't know if he's a redshirt or what, but I mean, he is playing for potentially a bag of money on Saturday. And, we already saw Sorsby leave Cincinnati. He's transferring. So there's an open position in Cincinnati. We know that DJ Lagway is transferring from Florida. We know LSU, not saying that Resloff is LSU caliber for this season, but my point is I think the Tulane guys are, especially Jake and maybe some others, are playing for a potential bag of money somewhere else. And I think that's going to motivate them to have a potentially, and I don't think they're going to win. I actually called it yesterday in my video, 35-17, which is exactly at 18 points. You said the line went to 17.5 today. They must have listened to my show. But I really do think that, I think maybe it was Dominic that said a little bit ago, you're playing, now they got the film. They know what they have. Like TJ said, I don't think they have the bodies and the depth to play the whole game. But if they can get a few things going and, somehow get Keywan Lacey in check, because I really think he could pop off for a big, big game. Another guy that could be playing for a bag, at another school next year. So it'll be interesting. I really think this game could be more fun than you would think by the names and the score that we saw at 45-10 earlier. What do you think on that, Nick?
Yeah, this one was really hard because you got both programs in chaos. I can probably guarantee both the coaches for JMU and Tulane are not even sleeping at all because they're trying to juggle both of these programs. But I'm glad you brought up that point. That's something kind of I wasn't really thinking about, but yeah, the Tulane guys, they could be performing for a promotion, right? So that would give them some extra motivation. But when it comes down to it, I sided in this game. I'm siding with the bigger, stronger, faster SEC team. I'm rooting for, both of the, the G5 teams because, a G5 team is my favorite team. So, but so yeah, my heart lies with the underdogs, but I do think that Ole Miss, with their physicality and the fact that, and like you said, they've already played before, they have the tape, and they're well coached, regardless of the chaos that has happened with these stupid deadlines, as TJ brought up. I think that needs to change for sure because it affects all of the programs and it's a domino effect, and it's just it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Attention. Do not attempt to leave. Do not adjust your screens. Do not panic. You are experiencing the Sunbelt Syndicate takeover.
Sunbelt Syndicate.
The time has come. Look, there's not enough purple on this show, so we've brought it out now. We're gonna change roles with Sam and try and host this thing a little bit Sunbelt Syndicate style with myself and TJ. So we're gonna take a little bit closer of a look at James Madison versus Oregon, and I think TJ, you might have some quick hits to start us off with.
Yeah, so thanks to you, Dominic, gave me a couple good research points to kind of bring up as it relates to the matchup and how James Madison can sort of, I don't want to say assert dominance, but certainly find a pathway to winning this football game. I do know, and we spoke a little bit about it earlier, James Madison has a hellacious offensive and defensive line. They're massive. They can move. These guys know how to play football. Alonzo Barnett is a hell of a quarterback. He can run it. He can throw it. He's athletic. He's somebody that Oregon's going to have to chase around and sort of make them get him off his spot. And for them, quite honestly, he's better not being on the spot than I think he is being on the spot. He's much better kind of rolling out and not being in the pocket sort of deal. But as it relates to kind of matchups, first of all, Wayne Knight is ranked, and if you see me looking off, I'm referring to my notes that I have here, is number 10 in the country in rushing. Now, again, strength of competition, strength of schedule, all these things matter. However, it does make a difference when your quarterback is ranked your running back is ranked in the top 10 in total rushing yards. When you talk about, the matchup itself, Oregon averages 38 points a game. JMU averages 37 points per game. 49% on third down is what Oregon is. JMU is 48% on third down. Oregon's defense gives up 15 points a game. Guess what? James Madison defense gives up 16 points a game. And the defensive scores for both teams are at 3. So when you talk about statistically, right, I don't think that there's a matchup as even statistically as this one is. Now, again, the pushback is always going to be strength of schedule, who these guys are playing against, and what the conferences look like. This is not the same Oregon football team that won last year. This is not the same football team that told Coach Prime that they play for clicks, right? Like, this isn't that same Oregon football team. They have a path to getting beat. I'm not saying that James Madison is going to do it. I didn't pick them to win, but if they did, I'm not going to be shocked.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I'm going to get everyone's thoughts on this after I ask it, but, at this point, Oregon will not have played a game in 21 days, 3 weeks without a game. James Madison will be at about 15, so just over that 2-week threshold because they played their championship game on Friday night. But we saw that the higher seed won every first round playoff game last year. Start off with Sam, since he's the host. He doesn't usually get asked questions as much. I mean, how much does it favor a team that's played more recently than a team who had a longer layoff?
Yeah. I mean, we saw it last year with Boise State whenever they played Penn State. All the rust and everything at the start of that game was really evident. And I think that you almost want to play, and Todd talked about it earlier in the show. Ohio State may have lost on purpose, maybe put themselves in a position to show their players, hey, we can win, but we're going to miss this field goal instead so that we don't have to sit for a week. So we have that, or get a better matchup. Obviously, Ohio State's sitting for the playoffs, or the first round. But that's still, you got to wonder if that's in the back of some of these people's minds of, we don't want to have that bye week unless your team's pretty beat up, in which case you probably hoping you do just so you can get healthy. But you still have that rust issue. The good teams will knock the rust off early in practice and get out and pound it. The teams that are trying to make a Cinderella run, not so much. The stage is going to be big, obviously. So it's just, I mean, if your coach has you ready to play, then by God, just go out and play. There's not really much you can do other than that. I mean, at that point, it's a preparation issue. If you're not prepared to step out on that field and hit somebody from the get-go, no matter how much time you have off, we see it first game of the year, every year. Yeah, you get your first 2 or 3 drives where everybody's getting back in the feel of hitting people, which should be what your scrimmages and practices are for, but people still wait till the first 2 or 3 drives of the year to hone everything in. And some of those games are won and lost. Miami and Notre Dame. If Miami and Notre Dame played later in the season, Notre Dame doesn't lose that game. We saw how Notre Dame was handling people and how Miami kind of slumped off there in the middle of the year. So, I mean, if you're going to have that argument at the end of the season for being off for 21 days before you play, you got to have that same argument at the start of the season of being off and having all that rest there, because that to me is more of a telltale of how your season's going to go and how prepared you are at the start of the season versus at the playoffs. And one could argue that if you look at these teams in their first game at the start of the season and you see how they played there, you probably get a good idea how they're going to play the first game of the playoffs.
Yeah. Hey, can you put up the Frosty Mug comment here? Because we're going to have some questions on that one. This guy's saying he's behind on the broadcast, but to the guy, which I believe was TJ, said he didn't think Oregon was a ground and pound team. You'll be in for a shock. Then that's their identity this year. Well, I don't know if I agree with that from the stats that I've seen, because the leading rusher for Oregon went over the century mark exactly 4 times this year. Okay. But the leading rusher for James Madison went over the century mark 7 times this year. Now, that's not to say that that's equal. Again, as TJ spoke about, this is not the same schedule going up against the same type of competition. But to me, that shows me that James Madison is much more of a ground and pound team, which I don't even know if I would call James Madison a ground and pound team. But if that's the kind of statistics I'm seeing over here with the number 10 rusher nationally on their side, I'm certainly not looking at Oregon as a ground and pound team with a quarterback that doesn't run the ball nearly as much as AB3 does for the Dukes. Let's jump over to Nick real quick and just think.
Can I jump in real quick? Can I jump in with?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, with just real quick with a little bit of stats for that. Oregon has 2 running backs that combine for about 1,300 yards and 6.9 and 6.1 yards per carry, respectively. So if you're getting 6 yards a carry and running the ball like that, then I could see that the argument there for ground and pound.
Well, yes and no, because if I have 2 running backs and they both equal 1,300 yards, all that tells me is that I'm really efficient at swapping them out.
Right. You got Whittingham's got 774, Davidson 535, and then Hill Jr.'s got 481, and he's averaging 8.2 yards a carry.
Yeah, I mean,
I also think though the receiving core has been pretty banged up for Oregon, so they've ground and pound a little bit. Other thing they had is some real weather games. Or you guys remember the oh God, the sheets of rain that were coming down against Wisconsin. In that game, Dante Moore went out, and they pretty much had to run the ball. They ran the bejeebus out of Rutgers for 300 and some yards. So I think Oregon is going to be a ground and pound team. This is going to be a little different Oregon team because this receiving core looks. I do know that again. Moore and Bryan are back for sure. I'm missing the other guy that got me of the year with the he was on the practice field yesterday. So they could have 3 receivers that haven't played in a while back on the field for them. So I don't know that they'll be ground and pound this week.
Yeah. Sorry for getting everybody off on a tangent, Dom. Go ahead.
Well, this is what our show's about.
Yeah, I'll jump over to Nick too. Like you guys said, you guys have fed some players to this Oregon team. I'm sure that leads you to watch at least some Oregon football. I mean, out now, again, I'm not saying they can't run the ball. They obviously have had success doing that. I don't know if I'd call what their style is, to me, ground and pound. But, I mean, what do you see out of this offense on the Oregon side of things, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, Boise State, we have 1,700 at least, maybe 1,900 on the ground between 3 backs, but I wouldn't call what we do ground and pound. I call what we did last year ground and pound with Emerson Jancy. That's definitely ground and pound. I think a Dan Lanning offense it's not necessarily ground and pound. It's more on the flashy side for real. I have like invested interest in Oregon. They took our punter. That's how you know they're using Boise State as a farm team when they take your punter, you know what's up. And then they have the nation's best tight end who came from Eastern Idaho, Kenyon Sadiq. I think Oregon. They may not be as potent as last year, but they still have a potent offense this year. And you know, if you take a look at my bracket, I have them doing very well in this bracket.
Very nice, Casey. They've got some very similar statistics when we look at the red zone scoring and the red zone defense. But in the red zone scoring, James Madison ranks 44th nationally, Oregon 47th nationally. And some of those statistics TJ ran off earlier, Oregon and JMU were 9-10 and 9-10 in those 4 statistics that he was talking about besides the defensive touchdown. So statistically, nationally, these 2 teams are extremely close. What are your thoughts on whether this game actually ends up being close on the field or not?
I think everybody would like it to be close, if that's makes for good TV ratings. But as far as the stats go, I think the context is what you ultimately have to look at. And like, I was just going over James Madison's schedule, and they only played 2 teams that you could even technically call kind of. Well, one is a current Power 4 member, and one was a former in Washington State, and they lost to Louisville 28-14, and they only beat Washington State 24-20. Everybody else, I mean, they handled pretty much business in the Sun Belt. But so, they're not going against these big 315-pound, 320-pound linemen that can run that the Big Ten has. Personally, I'm rooting for, JMU and Tulane. I just don't think they have a snowball's chance, especially Oregon. I mean, I've been anti-Oregon fan for a while just because everybody was like, oh, they're so good. But then, they'd get into the big games and they would just wilt. But statistically, JMU's there. I just think the context matters in terms of the quality of opponent.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, Casey.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, DJ.
No, so I was going to say, to your point, when you talked about these big 300-pound linemen that they're going to have to move, just as a point of reference, I just pulled it up. James Madison's offensive line, Simmons is 6'6", 323. McTurdy is 6'5", 305. Sweezy at center is 6'2", 313. Robel is 6'3", 291. And their right tackle, 6'4", 302 in Greenberg. So when we're talking about size, they've got that. And that's the point that I brought up earlier. is
Yep.
I think. Do I think JMU is going to win? No. Unfortunately, I would love to say yes. But if you're telling me that they're not going to win because they're not big enough, I'm going to call BS because they've got one of, if not the biggest offensive lines, certainly in the country, but if not the country, certainly the eastern part of the country. I mean, these kids can play ball, and they're absolutely ginormous people. So, I think when we talk about Oregon getting pressure and Oregon being able to stop the run, I don't care who you are. Moving 323 pounds, I don't care if you're, Aaron Donald. It's not a cakewalk. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
So, I got you.
323.
My question is though, is like how athletic is their offensive line? I've
That's
only
fair.
watched one game. And the reason I ask is like if you talk to Todd, probably like Ohio State's probably got a bunch of third stringers that are probably that size,
Sure.
but they're not athletic as the the ones or the twos. So again, I think it goes back to the quality of opponent, and I would love for JMU to make this a game. I would love for somebody to go in and tell ESPN and the SEC and the Big Ten, like, hey, you're not going to game in town. We got some players too. I just don't think it's going to happen, especially in the environment. I think the biggest bit they have is the fact that it's well, actually I lied. It's 7:30 kickoff, so it's going to be loud. There's going to be a lot of drunk high, but not because Oregon fans.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
There is a Spheric River out there that could be the difference in this game. I think it's supposed to potentially rain all the way up and maybe till kickoff. So if it stays in a rainy game, that could be an advantage for JMU.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I've heard the news whether men or ladies or people say, the weather's looking pretty. People are floating away, I think I heard on the news as they try to scare people. But it'd be a difference. I mean, look, you kept Wisconsin in the game against Oregon.
Yeah.
Have you checked the weather for like Eugene, Oregon over the next 10 days? I just checked it. It's literally rain from the 19th to the 31st.
Good Lord.
Yeah, they made it sound like, and I'm not talking, I saw someone on, I don't know, whoever, probably one of the news weather people on TikTok or something, but, basically literally saying like people's houses go in, there's so much rain that it was going to be like this massive amount of rain. But you know what they say in Oregon, it never rains in Autzen Stadium, except
there you go. Well,
we see it when it rains on Autzen Stadium.
Yeah, so that could be a good alleviator of big differences, right? And the good thing on James Madison's side with that fact is they play in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is located in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, which we know gets all types of climate and weather as well. So they're not going to be inexperienced in these tough games. Being at the championship game against Troy was freezing cold, below freezing throughout most of that game, if not the whole thing. And so, they've been battle tested in that regard. Obviously, Autzen's going to be a little bit different. Listening to some stuff earlier today, their fan base, student-wise, is gone. This is time for everyone to go away from school. Is it going to be the same exact rowdy crowd? I mean, I would assume it's pretty much going to be filled up, but does that feel the same when you've got people with money who could afford these expensive tickets versus a rowdy student crowd that gives you a little bit extra advantage in that regard? To Casey's point, this team didn't play the same schedule, but James Madison did beat Washington State by more than both Virginia. Okay, not great, but they also beat them by more than Ole Miss did. That game against Louisville, running a 2-quarterback system, they don't run that anymore. AB3 is the guy. A little bit different offensively. Wayne Knight wasn't as explosive or used as much, only ran the ball 5 times in that Louisville game. Now he's running that ball double digits every game. I mean, I call him the utility knife because he can also catch out of the backfield and looks like TJ Corman out there, shying guys to the side as he's running down the field. And just as, throwing out some names out there, both Emmanuel Bush, who is a question mark going into this game on the defensive line, but Pat McGurtry, who TJ talked about earlier, both recognize as Outland Trophy watch list guys before the season. Bronco Nagurski as well for Emmanuel Bush. Alonzo Barnett III, Maxwell Award watch list guy going into the season. On the defense, safety Jacob Thomas was Chuck Bednarik and Jim Thorpe nominee. And then you've got a freshman, Zahir West, with 7 sacks, who leads the team. Has come on really strong at that defensive end position. So, again, pound for pound, talent for talent, you've got a number of really good guys on the Oregon side of things as well. But are they banged up? O-line is a little banged up from what I hear. Is DeCorian Moore back? Don't know. We haven't heard 100% on that. Gary Bryant Jr., I think, Todd, is he the one you were talking about possibly having coming back this week for practice?
Yeah, I heard that Moore and Bryant were like pretty sure they were going to go, and I saw a video. I can't remember the other guy that was. Who was the other guy? Stewart, I think. Evan Stewart, I think, is the other one that was injured, and he was supposed to be out but was on the practice field too. Now, showing pictures of them on the practice field and them actually doing anything are two different things. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think this is a really good matchup that I just don't see this one getting out of hand. We've had a lot of 2-score games or less for both teams, but I have a hard time saying, again, ACC, UNC is not Oregon. It's not the Big Ten, but this less talented James Madison team just last year put up 70 on the road in UNC. Again, it's just this team is more talented than people are recognizing because they played a weak Sun Belt schedule. And I'll agree with anybody and everybody out there who says the Sun Belt was down this year. We're seeing it in these bowl games as we're watching them live. They didn't perform up to the level of expectation across the board. But James Madison has. They deserve to be in here. We'll see if they also deserve to move on to the next round. I hope so, but I don't know. TJ, do we finish with a pick here or just –
Oh my God, don't make me do it. Listen, I've made a huge case, obviously, this entire time I've talked for JMU. They've got the offensive line. They've got Wayne Knight, who's again number 10 in the nation in total rushing yards or total yards. He's used as a returner. He's used as a receiver. He's used as a scat back. He's used as the main running back at times. I mean, he can do it all. There's not anything that this kid can't do. The question is, can he do it against an Oregon run defense who is not only big, but also big and fast? Size only matters when size can run. And I think, Casey, that's your point that you were trying to make earlier, is that everybody's got some size, but what can you do? How athletic are you with that size? James Madison, we've seen him. Dominic has seen him over the years. They've proven that they can run with their size. Now, all that said, are they good enough to beat Oregon? My heart says yes. My eyes and my mind tell me maybe not yet. However, I don't think this is I think this spread is 25.5 or whatever it was. It was 20 something as of yesterday. I don't know if it moved.
It moved from 21.5 to 21.
21. Okay. I don't know that this is a 21-point ball game. I'll just say that.
All right, let's go with we'll start with Casey's in that right corner over there. Just a quick yay or nay, and maybe if you want to go with points, you can give us that too.
I'm gonna go Oregon. I'm gonna say it's like 42-28. I'll give JMU the benefit.
All right, Todd. I see you looking at some notes over there, possibly.
Oh, I think Oregon's going to win this game. Kind of, maybe, when I say going away 3 scores, I do agree with you, though, in many cases, though. I think Wayne Knight, what do you have, 212 yards last game he's out against Troy. They do have 2 sizable receivers at 6'2" and 6'1" out on the outside. So, a lot of times you'll get some of the G5 schools that'll have guys that are fast but undersized out there. I mean, these guys are pretty big at 6'1" and 6'2", and I know that Oregon's for corner, so You got to be pretty big to match up against him. And look, I agree with everything you said earlier. You got the number 2 total defense, the number 2 rush defense, number 5 on third down defense. You got a lot of good things going. Can they go for 60 full minutes, right?
Yes,
and that's where it's going to be the challenge. So I just think at the end of the day, for me, it's Shadiq and Johnson are going to be the biggest difference in using those tight ends all year. I think that's going to be the matchup that's going to be the most challenging for them to defend. And if they can't defend those 2 guys, it's going to be a challenging day.
All right. Yeah, don't disagree there. Nick, we've got a prediction from you.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I just love everything about JMU, the Signetti tree. Bob Chesney was on the Jim Rome show getting the karma, but so was Dan Lanning getting the karma. So I chose Oregon. My gut, and realistically, I think they'll cover. I think they'll cover what it is, but I do think, that spirit of what Signetti's built there, and Chesney's doing, he's doing double duty. That dude ain't sleeping, dude, like at all. But I think that could be a motivator. So I think the spirit's there. They got all those intangibles that Boise State's had against Oregon. So I do think there's a chance for an upset. And if it's anything like how Boise State handled Oregon in Autzen Stadium last year, it came down to a last-second field goal for Oregon. I could see JMU winning by 1 point, and I'm all for that. I hope they do.
All right. Sam?
We also have – I'm sorry, I budged in there. We didn't talk about both Oregon's offensive and defensive coordinators are both leaving. So, they're traveling too. So that could be a difference maker.
Yeah.
They're not 100% focused on the – now I know Dan Lanning's probably in the defensive side of the room, shoring that up. But, any changes could be interesting.
Yep. Sam, your pick?
I'm going to read a couple of these comments real quick that I put on the screen for you, just because it goes along with my pick. At the end of the day, this is from Todd's boy, I believe. At the end of the day, any D1 school has the size. What you can do with that size is what changes it. The main difference between Ohio State's O-line and James Madison's O-line is the speed and the power and some technique. And then one of your followers from Army Chow Mein, whenever one starts assuming size isn't easy to move, I think about the 245-pound linemen at the academies. Some 300-plus pound guys get easily moved by them. Some don't. It's more nuanced than just size. And to that I say it's more about the fight in the dog. What's that famous phrase, Nick?
It's not the size of the dog, it's the bite in the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's going to be like for 3-minute rounds. You got to play 60 minutes.
That was said in the Boise State OU game. So it's not the size of the fight, or it's not the size of the dog, but it's the size of the fight in the dog, or something. I used to say it all the time, and now I say it, and it's just weird for me. It doesn't sound. It's like saying pork over and over again. It just doesn't sound right after a while. But I did not pick James Madison in this one, but I do think that it's going to be a lot closer than 21 points, and I do think there's a chance for an upset. And if there is, it's going to come whoever's the last person out of the ball kind of thing.
So now let's keep in mind, we all pick the same team. And usually when that happens, nonsense goes on. I'm not saying it's going to. I'm just saying there's a chance. Listen, there's a team back in 2007 that Kirk Herbstreit came and said, Michigan's going to get a better look out of their practice squad than they would against Appalachian State. And all I'm saying is stranger things could have happened. We also did it again a few years later or a few years ago to Texas A&M.
Yep.
Right? We almost did it to Tennessee, almost did it to Penn State. These things, listen, it's when you start talking about teams who have the same type of athletes that you have, and maybe not the same in terms of depth, but if my ones are going to play the whole game, who gives a crap about depth? If I can keep my guys healthy for a full game, right? Now, the difference is that offensive and defensive line because of those rotations, but Oregon's not going to be swapping out offensive linemen the entire game, right? They're going to keep that same 5. So can that same 5 match up against JMU's 4 or JMU 4 match up against that same 5 all night? It's going to be one of those situations. Again, I'm not picking James Madison. I would love to, as the little guy who's always been an Appalachian State little guy, I want to pick JMU so badly. But again, I know enough and you guys know enough about football that it's very rare that these kinds of things happen. But I also watched them drop 70 on Carolina's head. So,
Yeah. My final argument here will be that the James Madison offense gets warmer and gets better as the game goes on. Not necessarily the case for Oregon, but they had a lot of blowout games, so it's hard to necessarily say that they, needed to keep their foot on the gas. The Dukes have 6 second half shutouts this season. Again, you can point to the schedule. They haven't played as strong of teams. That's true. It's also still really hard to keep people off the scoreboard for the entirety of a second half, of which they've done 6 times this year. Oregon does have 2 themselves second half shutouts, so they're no slouches when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. The biggest difference maker for me in this game, though, comes back to the coaching. Bob Chesney is returning and will stay with this team as long as the CFP run happens. And if you go back and watch really any game, but especially the game against UNC in Chapel Hill just last season, excuse me, it's the way he attacks and he is aggressive throughout the entirety of the game, knowing that he has to go for the throat if they're up early. So don't expect him to sit back and ground and pound this game into submission with a lead. He's going to play this game as if he's going to win it from the very start, and he's going to put it into the end zone as many times as possible. That will include a few trick plays here and there, but they're not going to get overly fancy. I think you're going to see a little bit of Matthew Sluka thrown in here just to give them a different look, something that they haven't seen. But I don't think you're going to see a 2-quarterback set. AB3 is the guy, and I think he's the difference maker along with the coaching in this game. I am going to go with the shot because we got to stay true to form, stay true to the brand here. So I'm going to pick James Madison to wrap us up here before we get into the next pick. Sam, I guess I give the show back to you now.
We'll be on a quick break after this. We'll come back and we will preview the Alabama-Oklahoma game and the Miami-Texas A&M game before we give our full bracket breakdown. So stick around. We'll be back after this.
Sunbelt Syndicate.
My camera lost me. I had to get my face back in it. Welcome back, college football fans. We are down a player, but that doesn't mean we can't keep going.
He's hit the transfer portal.
Yeah, it's a transfer portal.
You got that bag.
Yeah. Yeah, we do all this for fun. He has to be paid to stick around. Oh, spoken like a true G5 fan.
He did get a tiny bit of money from EA Sports when the lawsuit came out, but it wasn't even as much as the kids get these days from the game and all that stuff. He did tell me he got a little bit from EA back in the day.
He should have retired then.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it. Dominic, thanks for doing that takeover. It was a very informative deal, and it was fun to do. We should take over more shows. Moving in, we're our third segment, Power 4 versus Power 4. These are probably the games that are going to be the most entertaining as far as power football on power football. We may get some entertaining games out of the Ole Miss and JMU games, but if it goes like anything like what people are expecting it to go, maybe not. But let's get into these. We got number 9 Alabama's 10-3, and if you look at everybody in this playoff, they're really the only ones that don't belong. The only 3-loss team there. And you got number 8 Oklahoma at 10-2. This one's being played on the 19th at 8:00 Eastern on ABC. Bama's a 1.5-point favorite, surprisingly, with 41.5-point over/under that's been actually moved to a 39.5 now. Bama's picked to win 50.9% of the time to OU's 41.9. This is a rematch between OU and Alabama. OU won the first game 23-21 on the road, and OU's defense played a major role in that game, creating 3 turnovers. Really the difference in that game. Alabama, if they limit the turnovers, they're not going to have that that they may actually beat Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's defense is so stout. Casey, is Oklahoma going to pull out something that's really hard to do, is beat 2 teams in the same year? Are they going to pull this one out?
I mean, I sure hope they do. But then they've already done something that was hard to do this year and go into Tuscaloosa and beat a Alabama team with the home field advantage. But I mean, Oklahoma's also not an easy place to play at night. So we've seen that over the history. And if Mateer doesn't get hurt, I think they actually probably beat Texas in the Red River Shootout. So, I mean, if you watch the game like with Alabama and Oklahoma last time, both teams played really sloppy. But like you said, Oklahoma's defense with Venables and them, they fly around with the ball. They're aggressive, and they've actually got playmakers. Whereas we've seen it all year with Alabama. If you can get pressure on Ty Simpson, he becomes a very average quarterback. And I honestly don't think their offense is using Ryan Williams as probably as they should. He had a much better year last year than he has this season. But I'm pulling for Oklahoma. I think they pull it out. But it will be a close game again. Yeah.
Todd, do you think the Alabama cleans up their turnover issues? And do you think they get that revenge that beating the other team in their own home that they had happen to them? Do you think Alabama can pull this upset? Or I guess they're a favorite, so it wouldn't be an upset, but
they certainly can. Will they? I agree with Casey. I don't have them beating Oklahoma in this game. We did see the injury report came out earlier here today, and Jam Miller's not on it. So he wasn't in the game a couple weeks ago against Georgia. So we'll be interested to see if he's back. C. Mason Thomas was not on the injury report either for Oklahoma, which is good news for them. So we'll see how much those 2 guys can actually play, because those are big roles in these 2 teams. But I agree again with Casey. Listen, we got Brent Venables here with 2-3 weeks to scheme up a defensive masterpiece and make Ty Simpson throw the ball under pressure. And if you've watched Ty Simpson since, the little run there in late September, early October, he's not been good against pressure, and he's not been good at protecting the football. So I think he'll play like he's played recently, and probably a couple turnovers in this game, and that'll be the death of him. And can Ryan Williams actually catch a football for a while? Another question that we don't know. He's had some, drops this year by anybody's imagination he should have caught. So we'll see. Yeah, absolutely. This game is pretty damn even. I just think Oklahoma's defense is better. I think defense plays and wins these type of games, and I think they'll win this game because of that.
Nick, if Alabama loses this one and they're not in national title conversation again, is that the end of Kalen DeBoer at Alabama?
That's a good question. My gut tells me no. I from what I've seen him on on the Jim Rome show, he says he likes it there, but he's gonna lose. I'm just going to be upfront. I have a resentment against two of these teams in the brackets here, and one of them is a 3-loss Alabama, who didn't win their conference championship, who basically got in because they didn't get in last year. So, but I think when they lose, I think he's going to stay put. I don't think that he wants anything to do with Michigan. I mean, I wouldn't. And from everything that I've heard from him, even from his own media, he was just yesterday, he was asked 3 times in a row, are you going to leave? And he said, no. So I'm going to believe him by his word. So, and I wouldn't go to Michigan right now. It's a train wreck, and Penn State's not too far behind.
Yeah. Army Chow Maine says DeBoer can kick rocks. So they're already calling for it. Dominic, your thoughts on Alabama, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'll probably be the outlier once again here. I'm taking Alabama to win this game. I think it's partly to do with a few things. They don't want to end the season how they looked and played against Georgia. They've got the shorter layoff as well because of that game. So Oklahoma's been sitting idly by longer. And again, you have to look at past history, right? These teams that sat longer did not fare as well last year. We've seen it in a couple of these early bowl games as well. The teams that are sitting around, nobody's really hot offensively right off the bat. Mateer, got hurt, didn't play every single game of the season, still threw 10 interceptions here. And I just have a hard time thinking that Alabama can't step up and beat this team. And I guess that's what the bettors are saying too, right? You said that Bama is now the betting favorite in this game, even if it's just by a short margin.
Yeah, 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take them by a whole lot more than that, but I do think that they just pull through here. I do agree that Oklahoma's not an easy place to play, so it's not. I don't think it's going to be any kind of comfortable win, but I just see them pulling it out for whatever reason, and I guess the ones I just gave you, we'll go with those ones.
Yeah, this feels like it could be another offense versus defense matchup, and if Alabama's offense actually shows up. But to your point with the, I think it was Todd that made the point. OU, if their defense shows up, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, I was hoping it'd come back. It did not. OU, I think, will win if their defense shows up in the same way it showed up in Alabama, and beat them then. Granted, it was an ugly game back and forth, but it's probably going to be the most entertaining game of the night, considering it's the only one played on Friday night. So, that's
Mateer's healthy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anybody else have any last words on Oklahoma, Alabama? Good. Moving on. Number 10, Miami, who a lot believe don't belong there, and the reason why Casey's not able to find his cereal bowl anymore. And number 7, Texas A&M at 11-1. This one's Saturday morning, 12 or I guess afternoon on the East Coast, 12 p.m. on the East Coast on ABC. A&M's a 4.5-point favorite to open. The spread is now at 3.5, with the over/under opening at 52.5 and down to 48.5. Matchup predictor has A&M winning 54.3% of the time, with Miami 45.7. So pretty evenly matched game that has an opportunity to come on. Let's go and get Casey's knee-jerk reaction to this, because I know he's got a lot to say. This is basically the ACC's only hope to claim any kind of legitimacy at a Power 4 spot. They're weaker than the Big 12. And if they lose this game, especially in humiliating fashion, they may try and take the ACC out of Power 4 conference contention as early as next year or the year after. What are your thoughts, Casey?
As far as the game goes, I think there's a few critical components to this. Is Marcel Reed has shown that if you get pressure on him, he makes bad decisions and turns the ball over. And Miami has a very good pass rush on the defensive line, where they lack consistent, I won't say effort, but the attack is on the back end. Their secondary is good, not elite by any means. But then Carson Beck also happens to be the same kind of quarterback. If you can get pressure on him, he looks very pedestrian. And I do think Mike Elko is probably as good of a defensive-minded coach as we were talking about Lane Kiffin is on the offensive side. So I'm going to go Texas A&M here. I think it'll be a closer game, maybe 24-20, something like that. And I would like to circle back maybe towards the end of the show on the whole ACC versus Big 12 component, just because I think if the ACC teams that are traditional powers actually get some good coaches and administrations in there, the ACC would come back to being a true Power 4 conference, whereas the Big 12 doesn't have a single traditional power in the entire conference anymore, since everybody left with Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. But yeah, give me Texas A&M by 4 right now.
All right. Miami, they also have the added weight of proving the committee right about letting them in. Both these teams beat Notre Dame, who was left on the outside looking in, by a combined 4 points, and scoring in the last 64 seconds with Miami and 13 seconds with Texas A&M. Is there an added pressure for the committee to want Miami to win this to justify Notre Dame getting in, Todd? Or Notre Dame being left out, I should say.
No. So I think Miami should have been in personally. I think Notre Dame should have been in too, but I think Miami should have been in personally. Look, I'm going to go opposite of Casey here. I think Miami's going to win this game. I think Ruben Bain is going to be a real challenge for the offensive line of Texas A&M. And I think Malachi Toney is by far the most talented freshman in the country when he's getting the ball. And I think he can get the ball in literally every facet. You can throw him the ball, you can hand him the ball, you could probably throw the damn ball the way he's playing. And I think the physicality of the offensive line for Miami is better than people have been giving them credit for. And I hate to say what I'm about to say, so trust me, I'm not trying to say this. The experience factor goes with Carson Beck here in this game. We've seen Carson Beck make dumb decisions throughout his career. I think I think in this game he's going to play lights out. I think he'll make those dumb decisions in the second game more than he will the first game. So I'm going to take Miami here to pull out a win, in a relatively entertaining game, somewhere like 31-28, 28-24, something like that.
All right. Nick, what are your thoughts on Miami, one, getting in over Notre Dame, and two, do they have a chance against A&M?
Yeah, this is my other resentment here. I believe Notre Dame should have been in instead of Miami. I think, to me, Miami isn't the team that they were when they played Notre Dame in the game opener. And I really wanted to see a rematch with A&M and Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame is a whole different, or was a whole different team, riding a 10-game win streak.
Yeah.
And like we said, the only two, granted, they did lose to these two teams, and that was early on in the season, right? Notre Dame's a totally different team. And, I just think that Miami got in because, the ACC's a dumpster fire. I've said this many times. And they had to have, it seems like they had to have representation of all the conferences. So, they're in there because I think Miami is more of a team that we saw in the middle of the season. And, but in this game, aside from my resentment, they're playing in front of 100,000 fans. The home of the 12th man. I think that's going to play a major role in this. And I think, and I have A&M being very successful in this bracket. So I think A&M is going to win this handily.
Dominic, do you think it's going to be an easy win for A&M?
Yeah, I'm going to side with that more than I probably should, because as TJ said, we just saw App State a couple years ago down to Texas A&M and not be deterred and get the victory down there. So it's not the most imposing place to play when you look at it that way. But I am against Miami being in this field at all. If the ACC doesn't get it right, their champion doesn't get in, then why is the team that didn't even get to the championship game in the college football playoff at all? Yeah, I know the head-to-head matchup with Notre Dame, but Notre Dame at that point was the hotter and better team, towards the playoff time. That's not, we won't get off on that tangent. But yeah, I'm just not blown away with what Miami offers me on paper. I think the quarterback position really between Beck and Reed is very even in this game. Neither one of them is really going to be a pedestal above the other. I think wide receiver, that's the matchups I want to see. And obviously they don't go head to head, but Tony Concepcion, the NC State transfer who came in, he's been really good for them. But to me, I'm going to lean on the defense and the home field advantage. Cassius Howe may be the best defensive player in college football at that defensive end position there for Texas A&M. So I'm going to go with the Aggies to get the victory over on Miami, maybe quite easily.
Yeah. Last time these two teams met at Bryan and College Station is Saturday, September 12th, 2022, and Texas A&M won 17-9. The last time Miami beat Texas in College Station was 2008, and they beat Texas Tech 41-23. And so Miami can win, and they actually hold the series lead 3-2 right now. 1-1 at home for Texas A&M and 1-2 on the road. So Miami has proven in the past that they can win, and Miami is 2-1 outside of the state of Florida this year. So we'll see how that plays out.
Kind of a crazy stat that they played that few games outside the state of Florida.
Wow.
Florida State hasn't won a game outside of Florida in 2 years.
True story. Jeez. They need to spread some of the football love outside of Florida then.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we get into some predictions, fellas? I'm going to first not do that. Let's set up our prediction screen. And I'm going to share the two members and now three members with TJ being gone that aren't here anymore, but they have been members of the show, and I did get their brackets so that we could share them because they have been members of the show. And we'll start off with none other than the great Pop. And let's see. Get this like that. There we go. He's got Oregon beating James Madison, Alabama beating Oklahoma, Ole Miss beating Tulane, and A&M beating Texas. And then here's where we're going to start taking it down to the championship. He's got Tech over Oregon, Indiana over Alabama, Georgia over Ole Miss, Ohio State over A&M. Ultimately, Indiana and Ohio State playing for a rematch of the Big Ten title on the national championship stage, with Indiana coming out with 44 total points. And Dom, that reminds me, you and TJ didn't give me total points on your deals. So hopefully you guys don't tie because I forgot to get them from you. But if you shoot me a text real quick, I won't tell TJ what your text is, and then you can shoot me his text of what his are.
Okay.
What are your guys' thoughts on Pop's bracket? He's at home watching now. What do you guys think about this one? We'll start with Todd.
Well, I mean, obviously, Indiana's not getting to the national championship game and winning it, so we'll start there. I think the Alabama-Oklahoma game is a toss-up. I think if it's Oregon and Texas Tech, it very well is a toss-up game. I think Georgia's pretty sure to beat Ole Miss. I like Ohio State's chances beating the team that comes out of that other spot. So, I mean, I feel like it's very doable outside of the IU at the end. But, yeah, I think it's a reasonable bracket.
Yeah. Dom, I don't know if you're paying attention or not, but we're going to break away from CFP coverage for a half a second. The Raging Cajuns are storming back against Delaware and in scoring position with 23 seconds to play to tie the game up.
It'd be great.
Off topic, did the Cajuns go for 2 for the win, or they play for overtime?
With how they've played this year, I think they'll go for 2. Lunch Winfield can get it done and do some magic here at the end. But I think they'll probably try and win this bowl game with a 2-point conversion if they get into the end zone. That's still got a little bit ways to go, but we'll see.
It looks like Lynch was a little bit shaken up too. He shook up on that deep pass to get him in scoring position. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah. Hopefully he's all right. He has his name, is Lunch. He has a NIL deal with Lunchables. He has a varsity jacket that they've sent him that's personalized. So doesn't get that. That is exactly what NIL was made for, by the way. So just so we have a little side note.
Well, while we wait for the next play to go on, Bronco Believers bracket. Mr. Jacob, he's not with us. He was traveling tonight, so he couldn't make it. He's got Oregon winning, OU winning, Ole Miss winning, A&M playing it down to Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Ohio State. Texas Tech, Ohio State in the national championship. Dominic, what you think?
I like that championship matchup. Spoiler alert. I'm surprised they didn't go with the G5 rep in one of the games, but no, I mean, I didn't have the balls to do what he did, but I respect it. How about that?
Yeah. Update, pass interference, first down and goal.
Nice.
If they pull this one out, that's going to be crazy. It's funny.
From my perspective, he's not only a Bronco believer, he's also a big oil money in that defensive line.
Well,
there you go.
I talked with him after he made mention that he was right down the road from Texas Tech.
That's right.
And so I'm pretty sure. I mean, we were talking how I was like, oh yeah, I'm in Texas too, but I'm a day's drive away from you still.
Because it's a
All right.
country down there.
Right. All right. Nick, you have any thoughts other than the Texas oil money
No,
on his bracket?
it's pretty bold.
Yeah.
He's got an 8 over a 1 and a 4 over a 2. Yeah, pretty bold.
All right. Then we will get into TJ's bracket. The Sunbelt Syndicate brackets. He's got Oregon over JMU, Oklahoma over Bama, Ole Miss over Tulane, and A&M over I almost said Utah because of the U. A&M over Miami. You have Oregon and Indiana and Georgia and Ohio State playing it down to Indiana and Georgia, with Indiana winning the national championship. Dominic, why don't you go ahead and break down your buddy's bracket here? What do you think?
Yeah, he took the easy road. There's like hardly any upsets in this thing. Hardly any upsets at all. When I saw this, I was like, "You can't be serious. This is what you're giving me." I don't mind the Oregon over James Madison, and I think it's the smart pick if I had to be honest with myself. But I respect the fact that he's probably going with the smarter pick for the money aspects. So I don't hate it. I think that I mean Indiana Georgia matchup to finish it off would be a good game. So I can't hate too much.
And Louisiana loses a heartbreaker. I think that's tied in right in the money, right in the breadbasket, and he dropped it.
Oh no, I just saw it. I'm like a couple seconds behind you.
Dang.
The Sun Belt looks terrible in bowl games yet again.
Well, why don't
They
you
did beat South Florida.
why don't you shed some light on your bracket? Oh wait, that's TJ still. Hold on, wrong one. I loaded TJ's in. I loaded his in twice. Hold on a second. Let me go grab yours. There and there. There we go. That should look better.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, like I said, sticking with that James Madison pick, and partly maybe it's just because I've seen them a couple times in person this year, but I'm a believer. And again, if that Oregon weather is nasty, I don't, maybe typically that favors Oregon, but I think James Madison's the type of team that's kind of played in that type of weather, not scared of it. So I don't think it's going to be a detriment to them for any reason. I think. Yeah, I mean, the run ends after that. I guess I'll put it that quick way after that. I think Texas Tech would come in there with a defense that would shut down that James Madison offense. I think it would be a decent game if they end up playing each other. Be an interesting game. We talked about the Alabama one, but yeah, I guess I was riding the Texas Tech defense like Jacob did, but I don't think they'll pull it off in the end. I did agree with Todd earlier, which says like Indiana hasn't been in this position. They haven't played this many games before. They don't have that leadership factor to fall back on and say, you've been here, you've done this. What do we do next? How do we go about playing this many games in a season? Ohio State has. And I think that's what the difference maker is to getting to a national championship this year.
Yeah. All right. Casey, why don't you walk us through your bracket?
Oh, alrighty. Oregon game, I just don't think JMU has the dogs to go with Oregon. Going with Oklahoma over Alabama just because I think being at Oklahoma and it's going to be pretty similar, I think, to the first game they had. But sure, somebody's a little surprised. I got Oregon going so far, especially over Texas Tech there. Texas Tech's offense, every time I've watched them against anytime, like BYU, for example, they were good. Defense was just what kept them in the game, and then eventually they wore BYU down and pulled away. And the Georgia-Ohio State game, if Georgia can't stop Tate and Smith, which is a good possibility, then that could be interchangeable. Georgia's really been playing a lot better defense the later end of the season. But with Georgia and Oregon, I just don't see Oregon having the offensive firepower to stick up with Georgia. So as much as I hate the SEC and would hate to see them win, that's why I picked Georgia.
Yeah, well, you're not going to be on the show next time, so
I might be.
And it's important to note that I tried so hard to find an SEC voice for all of these shows, and none of them want to come on and talk to us. So they're not only scared on the field, but they're scared in the podcast world too. So
the new Disney princess is ESPN and the SEC.
All right. Let's go into Nick is the next one up. Nick, why don't you take us through your bracket?
Yeah. Do you guys have Google? Google it. All right.
Oh God.
Yeah. For me, I went to differentiate myself, as you can see on the top and the lower bracket. I went heavy on the Oregon. I just think that, and part of it's, you got an Idaho guy on the offense, Sadiq, and I just think that Oregon's team is, I think it's going to take its toll on Texas Tech. Texas Tech is but I respect the Big Ten more than I do the Big 12, and that was primarily my reasoning for taking Oregon up to the semifinals. In the lower half, and like I said, I'm rooting for JMU and Tulane. I hope that they pull it off, but in the lower one, I think A&M is a good team. I think just from what I saw, what they did with Notre Dame, and then they were consistent the rest of the way. Yes, they lost to Georgia, right? Is that correct? They lost to Georgia, which was a good loss. So I think I'm eyeing a rematch against Georgia in the semis, and then getting that one, and that also just differentiates my bracket from everybody else's, I thought. But I do believe that A&M's a really good team. I put Notre Dame and A&M probably an equal platform, and I really respect Notre Dame. So that's kind of why I'm riding with the Aggies. And then I was just bumping around the internet, and I brought up Google, and I Googled Indiana, and no, I'm just a big believer in Cignetti. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a culture builder. What he's done is remarkable in his career. What he did with JMU, that he went to Indiana, and look where he's at right now. I think that he's got a Heisman on his team. All that stuff. That's not luck. He's worked his ass off, and I just believe in Google, and I'm taking Indiana.
All right. This brings us to Todd. Todd, run us through your all-knowing bracket. You're always
all
listening
right.
to Todd bracket.
Well, I got Oregon beating JMU. I got Oklahoma beating Alabama. I think the defense is going to be lights out Friday night. I think Ty Simpson will make mistakes. I think he'll succumb, whatever you want to say, to the pressure of Oklahoma. So I think Oklahoma will win that game. I got Ole Miss winning this game. I think it might be a little closer than, what it was. Definitely going to be closer than it was the first time, I believe. I don't think Trinidad Chambliss will have 417 yards in this game, but we'll see. I've got Miami beating Texas A&M, and I said earlier Malachi Tony does everything but throw a touchdown. And oh, by the way, there was just a highlight here on ESPN of Malachi Tony throwing a touchdown earlier this season. So the kid can do everything. Second round, listen, I think Texas Tech is going to come to reality when they play Oregon. Oregon wins that game. I got Oklahoma upsetting Indiana in the Rose Bowl. I think it's going to be a very, very similar game to Ohio State and Indiana's game. I think Oklahoma will make the field goal or two in this game, and Fernando will have one interception that will cost the game. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma there. I got Georgia beating Ole Miss, and I got Ohio State beating Miami. Georgia, Ohio State matching up. I think Ohio State will get the revenge from a few years ago with Georgia, and they'll actually make the field goal to win the game this year at the stroke of midnight. It won't be on New Year's Eve, but it could still be the stroke of midnight. And I got Oregon beating Oklahoma, and I got Ohio State beating Oregon in the finals. And I think by that point, Oregon will just be too, I think the run will come to an end for them. I just don't think they can get to the final and win it, but I do think they'll get to the finals.
And how crazy was that Georgia Ohio State game to be the first loss of the new year in that fashion? That's heartbreaking.
Well, do we count it in the new year or in the old year? Because the ball didn't go through. Literally, I think it's almost like it was almost like exactly at midnight. So,
right.
Right.
It was crazy. I know we were out watching it. We had a big bonfire going, and I had a projector screen up, and we had everyone was huddled around watching it and remote roasting marshmallows and everything. It was a fun night. I remember it vividly.
Yeah, if Marvin Harrison doesn't get targeted in the back of the end zone and get knocked out of the game, it probably ends up in Ohio State's favor. But we won't go back and relive bad calls that happen in the games, like against Clemson and Georgia and all the games. So Indiana last 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very entertaining, especially in the second round. I mean, if you look at some of these matchups, no matter who's comes through, like we all believe it's going to be Oregon and Texas Tech. I think that's going to be an extremely fun game. Indiana versus Alabama or Oklahoma will be. I mean, you got two of the purest blue bloods out there in Oklahoma and Alabama playing literally the worst team in college football. So that will be a great opportunity to see how that works out. I think the Ole Miss Georgia game's kind of the one that's kind of like blah, because we've already watched this football game once this year. It was a great game, and honestly, Ole Miss probably could have won that football game, but I just don't think it's the one that's going to be like everyone's got to turn the TV on for. And I think Ohio State versus Texas A&M or Miami, either one is a great potential matchup. So I think the second round is going to be really, really exciting games. Too bad. Well, wait, are those games on Saturdays or are those the Thursday? And I think those are Saturday games.
They're the New Year's 6 games.
Those are, excuse me. Those are the New Year's 6 games. Yeah.
Oh,
It's the final, the semifinals. That's on the stupid Thursday and Friday nights. Right. Yeah. So I think we're in for a great New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
Nice. Now, one more bracket we got to take a look at. It is mine. I so wanted to take JMU over Oregon, but I did not have the balls that Dominic has.
I thought this was going to be a JMU Tulane national championship. I thought it was coming.
I was that close to doing it.
they both have a path.
But I did not have the balls Dominic has to put JMU over Oregon. I just think Oregon's got a lot of speed, and they played on the big stage. They know how to do it, and they have something to prove. They want to get to that Indiana spot, which I don't think they're actually going to do because I think Texas Tech has something to prove as well, and they're going to be saying, "Hey, the Big 12 belongs here." They'll take on to upset Oregon. I've got OU defense too strong for Alabama. They're going to put pressure on Simpson, and he's going to turn the ball over some more. OU moves on to play Indiana. My upset is Tulane beating Ole Miss. I think that they're going to go in. They've got something to prove. They don't want to lose 45-10 again. If they can get in and prevent Ole Miss from jumping out to an early lead, like what happened before, that turned Tulane into a one-dimensional team, I think they've got a chance. They've got a very P4 size front seven that can cause trouble if they don't fall behind early. So we'll see how that goes, see how much they've improved from September to now. And hopefully we've got some rust from Ole Miss not being in a conference championship game where Tulane played in theirs. And maybe we get that upset we all are hoping for, except for Todd and everybody else who didn't pick Tulane. Then I've got Miami beating A&M. As much as I didn't want to have that, Miami's good outside of Florida, and they've owned the series against A&M. They've proven they can win at Kyle Field, and that the 12th man doesn't bother them. Granted, it was 2008, but it's a program built on tradition that can go in and win those games. We saw it against Notre Dame. Granted, they may not beat Notre Dame nowadays or now versus back then, but still, I've got Miami winning over A&M. Texas Tech beating Oregon. I think Oregon's reign ends in that game. Texas Tech's offense, I think it's going to be a shootout. I don't think there's going to be much defense in that one. OU Indiana, I think that Indiana with Cignetti, even with the injured end, I really think that they're going to have next man up. They've had time to prepare for it. They've had the extra week to get into it and get some good first team reps. So I think they're going to be okay. Tulane's reign ends in Georgia, with Georgia winning that one fairly easily. But the score is going to make it seem like it was a lot closer than what it was. But Georgia's going to handle that one from start to finish. And then Ohio State beating Miami, setting up Ohio State and Georgia, where Georgia's going to win that one on a last-second field goal. And Indiana's going to beat Texas Tech, showing a defensive battle where most people would be thinking a offensive fireworks. That one's going to end in similar fashion to the Ohio State-Indiana game. And I've got Indiana and Georgia in the national championship, with Indiana walking out, winning this one by a score of 60-3. Maybe not that bad, but there's going to be 63 total points scored in that one, and it's going to be a barn burner. So,
you had me going there for a minute.
I just seen how many of you are paying attention. Wait, did he just say 60-3?
I know. I was looking right at the 63 when you said that. I'm like, hold on. That's doable with my math.
Yeah. The only way you could have made that better is saying 6-7.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So, fun story. We had Doc Haskell. He's Boise State's iconic esports head coach, 6-time national champion, 15-time Mountain West Conference champion. We had him on Bronco Nation Live esports showcase last night, and he said 6 or 7, and I'm sitting there, I'm doing this right here, and then all of a sudden Nick and my son, who was hosting the show, they just both bust out laughing, and Doc says, "What, did I say something?" And then Nick chimes in and says, "Yeah, you went 6-7," and he's like, I said it. So yeah, fun story.
Oh man.
Casey, you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on the conversation Dominic brought up about the Big 12 and the ACC, and then the Notre Dame Miami debate.
Yep.
So the funny thing about the Miami Notre Dame thing is, I'm sure you've all seen it in the news about how Pete Bavacqua, the AD of Notre Dame, came out and said about how the ACC has damaged the relations with Notre Dame on this whole thing. Well, so behind the scenes, I actually got this from the 247 Sports podcast. Apparently, like, the ACC was messaging all their member schools, but they CC'd Notre Dame on it. So all the trash talking that was done internally, Notre Dame was CC'd and saw everything.
Wow.
So which is where the whole, damage to the relationship came from. Plus, the ACC network could have literally played FSU versus Alabama as a point to get Miami in over Alabama versus Notre Dame, which we all know how that went down. I personally think Miami and Notre Dame both deserve to be in, and Alabama should have been out. I think it would have made for a greater TV to put Miami at 9 and send them to Oklahoma and have like an ACC SEC battle there, and then give a rematch of Texas A&M and Notre Dame, and settle it that way. But it is what it is. I think, like Todd brought up, Malachi Toney is no one stopped him all season. He's, for a freshman, he's doing stuff Jeremiah Smith did in his freshman year. It's impressive to see kids come in at a freshman level, play receiver like that, and do it. But I also think the teams that we saw in the beginning of the season are no longer the same teams. Alabama started off pretty strong, minus the Florida State loss. They went into Georgia, beat Georgia. But Alabama's like last, say, month and a half, they've struggled badly. Injuries have been part of it, but their offensive line is actually pretty pedestrian, which is weird to say about an Alabama team, because with Nick Saban, you're disciplined. You're talking offense and defensive lines are pretty good in the trenches. But yeah, I think hopefully next year with the memorandums that have been signed, apparently I just read it, and if I read it correctly, the ACC would have gotten Duke guaranteed in, and then Notre Dame would have bumped Miami due to them having a guaranteed spot if they're in the top 12.
Yeah.
Which, can you imagine what would have happened to Duke if they had made it in?
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it's probably what a lot of people think are going to happen to JMU and Tulane.
I would take JMU in a matchup versus Duke.
No, I believe.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
No,
but yeah,
it was Tulane. Tulane beat Duke.
Yeah, I said Tulane beat Duke.
So.
Yeah. So
Hey,
would.
Casey,
Yep.
What's your position on Notre Dame opting out of the Pop-Tart or bowl season just in general? What's your take on that?
Initially, I was actually really upset by it, and it kind of went along with the general consensus about people saying that they were going to take their ball and go home. But then after doing some research into it and figuring out the reasoning behind it, it made total sense. Notre Dame's biggest argument was, since the CFP rankings came out, they had them consistently pretty much at 8 after a few teams lost. And then the second to last week, they bumped them to 9 behind Alabama. And then to drop them out, even despite nobody playing, it was one of those things. They basically said the team knew that once they were out, the transfers were going to happen, and it wasn't going to be the same team playing in the bowl game. So it was going to basically be Florida State all over again. If Notre Dame goes into a bowl game against, I believe it was going to be BYU in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, half their starters would have either sat out or been in the transfer portal. So it wouldn't have been the same team. So the result would not have actually reflected on the team. And then the other part that I read that I've not seen confirmed anywhere was the money aspect. They knew that if they opted out of a bowl, it would actually hit ESPN where it hurt, which is money, because I think everybody who knows college football and watches College Game Day and all that, there is an SEC bias, whether they will ever admit it or not. So they wanted Alabama in because the SEC network and all that whole thing going on there. And unfortunately, when you have the AD of Arkansas, the chairman, and watches his team get spanked by Notre Dame, and it takes the entire SEC till I think week 9 to just make up the point differential, it kind of makes your point of how strong the SEC is kind of a moot point. Okay, well, Notre Dame, we're saying they don't deserve to be in the playoff, but they beat Arkansas, so badly that the entire SEC schedule couldn't top it until week 9. There's a lot to break down there when you look into the statistics, but I kind of applaud Notre Dame for at least taking a stand and saying, okay, well, if you're going to do this to us, we're not going to play by your rules. We're going to do our own thing. I think college football needs more of that. Like, because they're like the conference is now kind of, it's almost like you want to compare it to like unions in the workplace. They're doing what's best for them. They're not doing what's best for the sport. Like, I mean, why is Rutgers in the Big Ten? Like, would Rutgers even do well? Like, would they win the Sun Belt year in and year out if they were in it? Probably not. So, how do you sit there and say like the Big Ten is the best conference football, which they won the last 2 natties? You got to give them that credit for it. Or the SEC. I mean, Mississippi State beat some teams they shouldn't have, but they lost to some teams they shouldn't have. They need to start doing what they do in basketball. And like I know when Sam wants to talk about this in basketball season, is you need to do an ACC versus SEC, a Big 12 versus Big 10. Schedule some out of conference games to let your conferences actually spark the debate about who is good. And I wanted to touch on what Dominic said about the Big 12 versus ACC. There's not a single team in the Big 12 that's like what you would consider to be a traditional power. So recent, like we'll say the last 10 years, Big 12 has a leg to stand on. But if Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and like even SMU, if they go back to like their 70s, 80s, strength, like the ACC is kind of like a sleeping giant if they can ever get their collective heads out of their collective asses. I mean,
I've sided with Notre Dame, like having been there to a game this year, seeing firsthand, and I don't even take the conferences into, to form my opinion. I've seen it. Notre Dame is different, and college football is better with Notre Dame being an independent. That's my opinion, and so this, if the committees or any of that are trying to force Notre Dame into a conference, I don't think that that's good for football. And so, I've seen all the memes out there, and but I understand what Notre Dame's doing. They took a stand, and I've seen that program firsthand, and I respect it.
So one last thing here, Sam. Like, if you want to talk about Notre Dame and their conference, like their schedule, next year it's a mix of ACC and Big Ten teams. Unfortunately, for the most part, they're all like on the bottom half of the both conferences, so it does look like a weak schedule. But I was looking at like 2029. They play Alabama, they play Texas in Texas, they have to play Clemson in Clemson, and play Florida State like in Tallahassee. So if you're looking at a traditional power, like that schedule on paper right now, if Florida State and Clemson actually turn it around, I would personally say that's on like what people would consider to be an SEC schedule.
Yeah.
So, let's see if the NCAA, like in the committee, actually backs their words and says they'll actually focus on strength of schedule over, because I do feel like Texas actually got punished, aside from the Florida loss, for losing to Ohio State. Like if they would have gone and played, I don't know. Well, let me look here at a general Big Ten team that's good. Say they would have went and played Illinois and beat Illinois. They might actually be in at 10-2.
Maybe. Nick, your final thoughts.
No, even though I don't have a dog in the fight, I love college football, and I love all the angles of this. I love the drama. I would be good if they kept the 12-team playoff as it is. Maybe a little tinkering here and there. Obviously, they just made rules today that the ACC is going to get a representation like a 7-5 Duke, but I love college football. It's been great. Thank you.
Where can the people find the articles you're writing on things?
Yeah. I write some pretty good articles. about Boise State, you can find it at bronconationupdates.com/BNUNW, and you can find my whole catalog there.
All right. Let's see. Both of you have a dog in the fight. Both of you probably have some great final words. Let's go, Todd, first, since you're top of the screen.
Well, we've talked about most of the stuff today, so I don't have. I mean, we can debate and rehash and relive all the things that Notre Dame and Miami, but the bottom line here is, if we want to be the betterment of college football, we need to get the SEC officials out of the game. And Notre Dame would have beat Texas A&M because there would have been a holding call called, and we would have had a redo on that down, and we would have had Texas A&M not scoring. All of those things would have been true. So I think the first thing we need to do is burn down the SEC officiating. And unfortunately, if you look at the first round, there's only one game the SEC officials can actually officiate, and that is JMU at Oregon, because everybody else is playing with an SEC team in the game. So that's a little bit on that. But other than that, I mean, I think I like what Nick said. I love college football. I mean, I just watched a freaking junior freaking college national championship game, right? Like, this is what I do. I'm keeping a big eye on the Division III Final Four. This weekend is going to be very interesting. We got big news here in Ohio with John Carroll and the Mount Union thing, which we won't get into. But I just love college football, and I think we're set up for a really exciting tournament this year. And I think however we tweak it, I want more college football. And how we get more in a limited schedule, I don't know, but the more the better, So let's just keep playing all the way and have a spring league. Maybe that's what we should do too, is, a little spring league to determine the rankings going into the fall.
I was about to ask, would you support a kind of based on how the fall ended, a tournament style 6-week or maybe round robin, not so much tournament, a round robin style 6-week spring season?
I'd almost be interested in watching, like, if they wanted, obviously you got protection of players, right?
Yeah.
I would be cool with watching a 7-on-7 tournament, honestly, in some ways, because, now all of a sudden you get a fun little tournament with 7-on-7. JMU, they could easily win that tournament, because now you don't have to worry about nothing against JMU. I'm just saying is like, that would be like that, where you take out the offense and defensive lines in these games, all of a sudden, like, skill position on skill position, it could be fun. But listen, I like college football. I do want to end saying that, at the end of the day, these are student athletes. The vast majority of them are going to get a college education. Although I don't know how they're doing it with all these transfers. You can't graduate in 4 years when you transfer 4 years in a row. But a lot of these kids are going to get a college education. And, there comes a point in time where, like, 17 football games, if you play 12 regular seasons plus the one championship game plus 4 into playoffs. I mean, it's a long season for them. Yeah. So, it's fun to say we wanted more college football, but, there's already a lot here now. So, but I would be interested in, and it's not a subject for now, but maybe in the off season, I think there's some ways we can tweak the playoff, make it better, still make it fair for everybody, still give the best group of 5 team a chance to play in the playoffs, maybe have a secondary playoff or an NIT type of thing, and get rid of some of these bowl games that I mean, no one's watching these games. I mean, look at these attendances that we just watched on these games tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nobody at these games. We're junkies, we're watching them, but how many people are really watching these football games?
Maybe pare down the bowl season and to where they all fit on the weekend, Friday, Saturday.
Well, maybe we need to get the NFL off of Saturdays again,
Yeah.
and that would be a good starting point right there. I mean, they got enough days already. Let's get them off of Saturday.
Right.
So, all right.
Your point about the officiating, as Pop pointed out in one of his pop-offs, the NCAA is $1 billion organization. Why have they not yet created a centralized officiating under one roof instead of conference affiliated to go in and officiate all games instead of, okay, this conference is going to have their officials and they're going to have their standards. This conference is going to have theirs and they're going to have their standards. Oh, we'll keep them honest by putting them on a report card system. And those are the ones that get to do the bowl games and whatnot. Why do any of that? Just take them all off, put them under one roof, one merit system, and go from there.
Well, I agree with you on that. And I think the one thing we also need to do 100% is everyone needs to go to the ACC replay setup. I think the ACC, of all the things we've trashed the ACC for, they have gotten the replay part of it correct. I mean, no one's questioning what they're thinking in the booth because they're telling us, hey, this is what we think. This is what we see. Can they get it wrong? Sure. But, but ultimately, I mean, the SEC officials have just, look, they've actually suspended officials forever, just, this year. We won't mention that's the same one that caused the problem with the Ohio State Clemson fumble. That wasn't a fumble. That was a fumble. That was a touchdown. That wasn't taken, all that stuff. And Clemson ended up beating us. But the bottom line is that the SEC officials should not be allowed in the NCAA or the college football playoffs. End of story. And it's almost 12:15, 12:17. So Sam, finish this off and let's go to bed.
All right, Dominic, your final words, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, I'll just address everybody real quick. Todd, SEC and Sunbelt share officials, so I share your sentiment. Nick, I love college football just like you, so I am all for more the merrier. And Casey, I'll say the ACC going that way, the Big 12 going that way. Traditional powers be damned, because this NIL and transfer portal is going to change that forever. We might see some years here and there, but that's what I feel on that regard. And Sam, thank you so much for putting this together, man. It goes long, but it's because we have so much to say, because we're so passionate, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was really hoping this one would be under 2 hours, and here I see we're at 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I'm like, oh, we're going to have another 3-hour show. Dang it. We're only covering 4 games.
Yeah.
So, but it was nice having you all on this year. Next year, I'll probably start this a whole lot earlier in the season instead of the week before CFP comes out. Maybe go 2 weeks before, so we get a picture, kind of lay the landscape of what we think the CFP might do. But we'll talk about that in the off season. I do appreciate each and every one of you coming up on screen with me. It's been a blast. I don't know if we will have another one. We might do a round 2 show. We might do a championship show. I have not decided yet. I'll get with each of you off screen and go from there if you want to do that. But again, thank you guys for coming out. If any of you are interested in doing a basketball show, I've decided January 7th is going to be the inaugural basketball show, and I'm calling it Bourbon, Beer, and Basketball, highlighting local brews and your favorite bourbons. So if any of you want to be a part of that, let me know. If anybody watching is a basketball enthusiast and wants to be a part of that, shoot me a DM, and we'll get you on the show for that. Again, thank you guys. It's been a blast, a pleasure, and look forward to more screen time with y'all in the future.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, guys. Well, enjoy the weekend. And go team.
All right. Y'all have a good one.